At the beginning of the story, we see a boy going to a store. He looks very sad and dejected while buying something. He thinks to himself, I'm sick of this. Instead of a triangle kimbap that has hard rice and very little filling, I want warm, shiny rice with different ingredients in it. Instead of a can of beer with a mild taste and little bubbles, I want a beer with a strong scent and the right amount of bubbles. Then he buys kimbap and beer and returns to his house. Again, he starts thinking sadly while eating, instead of this place, I would like to go somewhere else where I can enjoy life with everyone. We learn that this boy belonged to an ordinary family. His family was very hard-working. After finishing school, he got into a good university, and by chance landed a job at a reputable company. But one day, both his mother and father passed away. Because of this, he fell into depression and remained that way for 4 years. Suddenly, he loses his job. Now he is working at a small game development company. While thinking about all this, he smells cigarette smoke coming from the direction of his window. When he goes to see who is smoking, he opens the window and sees a gate to another dimension. He is quite surprised. At the same time, he receives a notification on his phone about the seal gate. He wonders, am I the only one who can see this gate? If this is some kind of gate to the future, that would be even better. Still, if this is a way to change my life, I'd like to try it. But how should I use it? He tries to put an item inside the gate, but it doesn't go through. He then realizes that none of his items can pass through except for the one he had kept with him. He thinks further, it could happen that if I go inside I may not be able to return, but it doesn't matter. Let's go inside. Upon entering the dimensional gate, he arrives at an old house. Looking around, he thinks, this house looks very old. Everything here must be expensive. He looks out the window and enjoys the view of the village. After a while, he notices a shiny paper on the side table. It is a contract related to the dimensional gate. According to the contract, he can travel back and forth between 2 places, but the gate will only work twice. There is also another item called the subspace pocket. This pocket is connected to the gate and can be used to lift any item from Earth as long as the item's weight is within a certain limit. To use it, you must place your right hand on the item and your left hand in empty space. There are no restrictions on what you bring in, but the only thing you can take back is gold. The boy is shocked to learn that he is initially being given 1,000 gold coins for staying there. He reads further, if you sign this contract, you will learn the language of the Manhwa Empire. You have 7 days to think about it. If you do not sign within 7 days, all memories related to this dimensional gate will be erased. If you die for any reason, the contract will be automatically destroyed. If you want to sign it, place your right hand on this paper. The boy thinks 7 days is too much. I'll just sign it now. As soon as he signs, he learns the language of the Manhwa Empire. The boy is welcomed into the empire and given the name Cho Isu. He wonders, what can I become in this world? A nobleman? A feudal lord? A wizard? Well, it doesn't matter for now. I just want to stay here and escape the small problems of my life. A lady says to him, did you not like the food? He replies, no, it's not like that. I was just thinking about something. Anyway, maybe this food won't be enough to satisfy me. He once checks his room to confirm whether he exchanged all the gold for cash. He plans to return to that place again, but he loses consciousness and falls asleep. When he wakes up, he notices that he looks much younger. His skin has become shiny, the color of his hair has changed, and his nose is a bit sharper. He jokes to himself that maybe money was deducted from his gold for this new face. He then goes back to the same village and wonders, will my phone work here? Well, I don't really need to use it while I'm here. Opening the window of his room, he is once again shocked by the beautiful view. He sees a lady in the room next to his. She sees him too. Yasu thinks, is she a villager? My eyes made contact with her. Should I greet her? But the lady speaks first and asks, who are you? Yoziu introduces himself. The lady replies, this house has been empty for a long time. Did you just move in? Who are you? Did you get permission from the village chief? Izu answers, I'm an adventurer. I'm planning to stay for a week. If I decide to stay longer, I'll ask the chief for permission. Then the lady says, since you're here, come and have a meal. Oishi didn't expect her to be so polite. Then he goes to have a meal with them. In the next scene we see him sitting down to eat, but the lady gives him just one bowl of soup. Seeing this, he feels that the food is very simple. However, looking at it, it seems delicious. Anyway, it's better to try eating here than sitting alone at home drinking beer and eating triangle kimbap. Since he's going to stay here for some time, he thinks he should get used to the food. He then asks the lady her name. The lady tells him her name is Maggie Humphrey. He further asks, "Do you stay here alone?" Aunt Maggie replies, "My husband has gone to the bar to work, and my son lives in another town. Tell me, where have you come from?" Isu says, "I have come from Sioux City, Korea." Aunt Maggie replies, "You've really come from quite far." Then Isu says, "Now I would like to try eating this. Anyway, there's no spoon or fork here, which means I'll have to dip this bread in the soup and eat it." Looking at the soup, Isu thinks, "This kind of soup is also sold in our city, but many other types of ingredients are usually added to it." Aunt Maggie asks, "Won't you eat this?" Isu replies, "No, I will eat it." Aunt Maggie says, "Eat it before it gets cold." Isu thinks, "The bread is a bit hard, but when I dip it in the warm soup, it becomes soft and actually tastes really good, but something is missing. Oh, black pepper." Then he says to Maggie, "Excuse me, ma'am, do you have black pepper?" Maggie looks a bit surprised and asks, "Did you not like the food?" Isu replies, "No, it's not like that. In our city, black pepper is added to every kind of soup, that's why I asked." Aunt Maggie responds, "Maybe it's cheaper where you live, but here it is very expensive, so expensive that only noble people can afford it. I've never bought it in my life." Isu thinks maybe she doesn't like talking about black pepper. Then he says, "This bread and soup are really delicious. There's a deep hint of corn in it that makes it taste so good." Aunt Maggie replies, "Don't talk so much, just eat it." Isu says, "Forgive me, but if you don't mind, can I know the recipe?" Aunt Maggie, who was making something, says, "Okay, you want to know the recipe? Fine, come behind me." Then both of them go out of the room. Isu thinks, "The air here is much nicer and fresher than the air of the city." Aunt Maggie says to him, "Come here." Isu starts following her. Then he asks, "By the way, what's the name of this village?" Aunt Maggie replies, "This is Laudine." Isu starts looking around. Aunt Maggie says, "What are you doing? Come here and look carefully." We see some ingredients kept there, which include corn powder, Aunt Maggie's homemade butter, and onions grown in Laudine. Then Aunt Maggie explains the process of making the soup. First, the butter has to be melted, then fry the chopped onions until they turn brown. Onion acts as a sweetener, so there's no need to add anything else sweet. Isu thinks, "I didn't know onion could be used like this in corn soup." Aunt Maggie continues, "Next is this corn powder. I bought this corn from a local trader. He said it's a new crop, so we won't be able to get it for some time." Isu thinks, "It seems corn isn't very common here." Maggie says, "I thought I'd try making powder from this corn. It actually worked, so I continued doing it this way. Just mix a little of the corn powder with the fried onion, then add water and milk together, and boil it on a low flame. Finally, just add a little salt. Now it's ready." Isu is amazed watching the soup being made. He thinks the process is so simple, but even if I try making it, it probably won't taste this good. Aunt Maggie starts going inside the house with the soup. Isu takes something out of his pocket and gives it to her as a gift. Aunt Maggie looks at it and is very surprised. It is a mirror that looks quite expensive. Isu says, "You invited me to your house for food, so this is a small gift from me." Aunt Maggie thanks him, but then rudely hands the mirror back to Isu. Isu thinks, why is she acting so cold now? Then he asks her for directions to the library. Aunt Maggie gives him the directions, and Isu puts the rest of his thoughts aside and heads toward the library. As he walks, we see him looking through a window where he notices a girl. When she sees Isu, she runs away. Isu thinks maybe she's shy. He continues walking and eventually reaches the library. Upon entering, he sees a boy with a name tag that reads Shara, who is eating something. The boy welcomes Isu. Isu greets him, "Good morning," and thinks, this man must be at least 30 years old. By the way, what is he eating? The boy says, maybe we haven't met before. Isu replies, I'm an adventurer who has come to this village for a short time. My name is Isu. I'm from Seoul City, Korea. Isu looks around the library and thinks, this is a library, but it's better than the bookshelf at my home. There are only around 50 books here. Maybe these are all rare books. Still, I don't understand one thing. Why is such a good man taking care of this library? The boy asks Is, have you come here to look for something? Isu replies, yes, can you give me a map of the IR Empire? The boy brings him a map. Isu asks, can I borrow it? The boy replies, no, only people of this village are allowed to borrow books from the library. You have to read them here. As Isu starts looking at the map, the boy also starts observing it with great curiosity, seeing which Isu thinks. He seems genuinely interested. He is very worried and thinks, I will have to flip the pages carefully. If a page gets torn by mistake, it will probably cause me a lot of trouble. Looking at the map, Isu says to the boy, this is a map, there's nothing on it except the sketch of the coastline and the continent. The boy replies, in Man it's illegal to put cities or villages on the map. He then points to a place and asks, is this Lauren village? Isu says to the boy, is it because of war? The boy responds, yes, that's why a detailed map can only be read by the royals and the military. Isu thinks, I hope there won't be a war here. I wouldn't like to live in this world, suffer the wrath and serve only the military people. Isu then asks the boy if war happens often there. The boy replies, it's not like that. Recently a wizard's family helped prevent war in our empire. Looking at the current situation, it seems unlikely that anyone would have the courage to attack our empire. Isu feels happy and thinks, it's good that I won't have to serve the military. Then the boy introduces himself and says his name is Hans. He is in charge of all tasks that require strength in the village. He says to Isu, if you're around my age, let's be friends. Isu tells him that he is 23 years old. Hans is shocked and says, do you use any drink or lotion to look young? I'm 17 years old. Isu is surprised to hear Hans's age. He didn't think Hans would be so young. Then both of them become friends. Isu asks Hans about the food he was eating. Hans says, this is bread with raspberries on it. First we cook the flat bread and leave it for a few days, then top it with different kinds of food. On this one I used crushed raspberries. Then Hans says to Isu, do you want to have a bite? Isu thinks, after seeing it, it doesn't look so tasty. Then Isu asks Hans, by the way, which is the nearest city around here? Hans replies, Pushing City is the closest, but it takes 3 days to reach there by car. Then which is the biggest city? Hans replies, Armenia City, but I've never been there. Some merchants come to our village and I've heard about it from them. It's the capital city of our empire. It takes more than a month to reach there by car. When Hans hears the sound of some people coming, he thinks the merchants have returned. He asks Isu, can you take care of the library at this time tomorrow? I need to go meet the merchants. Isu gets a little confused. Then Hans says that Isu can also get the things he needs from the library. Isu couldn't refuse. Both of them come outside, where we see some merchants. Isu feels very excited seeing them. He goes to say something to Hans but sees that Hans is already gone. Then we see Hans asking Aunt Maggie where the merchants went. Everyone is in a hurry. Hans wants to return home because he has to buy something and needs gold. After coming home he thinks he should take a shower. Then he thinks further, I cannot go from this world to the other world with anything. Going to another world wearing just underwear is a bit too much. It's strange, but what can I do? Then he thinks, yes, it's better to take my box of gold coins to the other world than to come and go again and again. That's why I need a subspace pocket. He goes to another place, takes 2 gold coins and heads out to meet the merchants. He goes to a restaurant where the merchants are going to stay. There are a lot of people there, which Isu finds very pleasant. He sees Aunt Maggie there. Aunt Maggie asks Isu, have you come to eat food? Well, you'll have to wait for it. Isu replies, no problem. Then Aunt Maggie says, I'll bring food for you in a while. Till then, drink this. Isu says, thank you, and starts thinking, If she gives me beer, how will it taste? I had beer before, will this one taste different? Then Ant serves him beer. Seeing it, he gets very surprised because he has been drinking this kind of beer for quite some time. He doesn't let even a single drop spill and drinks it completely. He finds the taste very delicious and drinks it again. Then Aunt Maggie comes over and says, "You'll have to give 1 silver and 5 copper coins in exchange for this drink." Isu gives her a gold coin. In return, he receives 8 silver coins and 5 copper coins as change. He thinks this means 10 silver coins are equal to 1 gold coin, so the cost of 1 cup of beer is around 15,000 won. Then he asks, "Do I have to pay separately for food as well?" Aunt Maggie says, "Don't worry, you've already paid for both. By the way, is the price of beer also cheaper in your city? Because here we get 1 cup of beer for 2 copper coins." She adds, "Well, now I'm going to prepare food for you." Isu says, "Till then, I'll enjoy this beer." He looks around. There are a lot of people, and he thinks he should go and talk to some of them. Then Hans comes, calling Isu. Hans says, "Have you also come here to eat?" Isu replies, "Would you like to join me?" Hans says, "No, I came to eat with my family. In our village, it's a rule to spend time with your family during meals. But my family gave me permission to go and meet the merchants. That's why I came here." That's when Isu gets to eat. This time the food was pork stew with bread. Isu thinks, "I also feel like eating with my parents." That's when Hans says, "Your food has come." Hans looks at the food and says, "This is usually eaten in winter, and now it's summer. But I'm sure it will still taste very good." After the meal, Hans says, "Let's go meet the merchants." Isu replies, "That's fine." Then he looks at the food and starts thinking, generally people keep pork like this for 2 days, but that can spoil it. That's why common people eat it as quickly as they can. Fresh pork juice and vegetable soup preparation tastes very delicious. At the same time, they've used essential herbs and salt, which gives it a unique taste. I remember this taste. My mother used to cook food like this. My mother used to make very spicy food, which I liked a lot earlier, but now I don't like spicy food. While thinking about all this, he remembers his mother a lot. When Isu is done eating, Hans asks him again, "Mr. Isu, what will you do now?" Isu says, "I'll go see the merchants." Hans gets excited and says, "Okay, let's go quickly." Then both of them go toward a small festival. Hans says, "You'll find a lot of things here." Aunt Maggie asks the price of a mirror. The shopkeeper says, 8 silver. Isu sees Aunt Maggie asking about the mirror and thinks, "I'm sure the one I tried to give her had better quality. Anyway, 8 silver is 80,000 won. If I were to sell 3 a day, 90 a month, I'd earn 7 million won a month. Awesome." Then Aunt Maggie asks for a cheaper mirror. The shopkeeper shows her a wizard's mirror for 3 silver coins. Aunt Maggie understands that this is a mirror made by a wizard. On the other side, Isu sees a man and thinks, "I've never seen this face before." The old man says to Isu, "Where did you come from?" Isu replies, "I am an adventurer from Korea. My name is Isu." The old man says, "It's my first time hearing such a name. It must be really far from here." Isu tells him, "It's a miracle that I came this far alive. By the way, how much does spice cost nowadays?" The old man replies, 6 gold per pound for black pepper, 6 gold for nutmeg, 1 gold for sugar, and salt is 2 copper. Isu thinks carefully. 1 pound is about 450 grams, so 1 kilogram of black pepper would be 12 gold. That's about 1.2 million won. That's awesome. Then he asks, "Is that standard followed everywhere in Armenia?" The old man replies, "Well, we can say that the prices are similar here and there." Hearing all this, Isu starts forming a detailed business plan in his mind. He thinks, considering the transportation fees, city taxes, and store rental fee, I think it's okay to sell it a little cheaper here. Judging by how they react, they must have increased the prices since they are dealing with innocent rural peasants. Anyway, spices are quite expensive here. If I just find a route to sell them, I might become the richest person in the Armenian Empire. If that happens, I'll be done with you, Manager Park. We see that the same girl starts watching Su from behind a tree. Isu starts asking the old man how much did it cost you to get the black pepper from the port. The old man replies, "Of course, I can't say that." Then Isu says, "Did I mention that black pepper is really cheap in the place I come from?" Isu gives an evil smile and continues, "If we talk about this further, I might be able to provide those at a reasonable price." The old man replies, "3 gold." Isu asks, "Where is that continent anyway?" He continues, "Since they come here and that reduces their burden of having to go to the big city, I think they will buy it for 2 gold coins, right? By the way, I'll ask other merchants too before deciding the exact price." Hearing these lines, the old man says, "So why don't you sell all the black pepper you have?" Isu starts looking at the man with suspicious eyes and says, "Looks like you're lacking in supplies, is that it?" The old man replies, "Of course I am. Every time this crop grows, the royal family and the elite people buy it. Because of that, ordinary people like us are not able to buy it even if we want to. That's why this time I could buy only 5 pounds of black pepper." Isu thinks, "I can understand why it's so expensive. It's brought from such a far distance. Even bringing 2 kilograms of black pepper from that far is a big deal." Then he says, "Forgive me, but for today I don't have anything." The old man gives him a card and says, "Take this." It was written on the card, "Spy Store, Colin Mug Wall, Central Market of Armenia City, Spice Street number 5. Then the old man says, "If a trade route opens to your continent, come to my store. And now, goodbye." In the next scene, Izu sees a kid sitting. He thinks he should go and talk to that kid. He goes to the kid and asks, "Hey kid, do you live here?" The kid says, "I'm not a kid. I'm 10 years old." Isu says, "Forgive me." Then the boy asks, "Where do you come from?" Isu replies, "From Korea." The kid says, "Liar, I've read 100 books but I've never heard of Korea. What are you talking about?" Isu says, "Do you know I'm 23 years old and I've read more than 1,000 books, yet there are still many things I don't know. And you think you know more than me?" The boy replies, "I'm the son of a general merchandiser. Mino strives. What about you?" Iso tells his name, to which the boy says, "That's a very intellectual name. By the way, since you've read thousands of books, are you rich? Because in this place thousands of books are equivalent to several 100 million won." Isu says, "Anyway, I have a question." The boy gets surprised and asks, "What do you want to ask me?" Then Isu gives him the same mirror and says, "Can you check this out? How much do you think this mirror would be worth?" The boy replies, "As long as it's sold officially, about 3 gold. Then Isu asks, "Sold officially?" The boy says, "With this quality I'm sure it's made with magic, but there isn't a seal that means this was made by an illegal wizard who wasn't approved by the royals." Then Iyasu asks, "So you mean it can't be sold? I guess I should just quietly sell it then." Eso says. The boy replies, "Yes, you can sell it on the black market. Noble families go crazy collecting unique things, so this would be an easy way out." We see that the boy likes the mirror very much. Aishu says, "Can you keep this?" The boy gets very shocked and says, "Really, I can keep this? But wait 1 second. Will you have any conditions in exchange? Because there is no such thing as free in this world." After that, Izu asks the boy, "Then let me ask a question. You came from Pussing, right? Aren't there any other villages around?" The boy replies, "There's a big village named Rin that's 2 hours away from here, but I like Laden more." Isu asks why. The boy says, "Because the people here aren't greedy and they also sell good quality hay at a cheap price, so the horses like it. And of course I can't forget the delicious food made by our Aunt Humphrey." Isu thinks in his mind, "It seems everybody loves Aunt Humphrey's food." Then Isu asks, "What about Armenia City?" The boy says, "It's really a good place to live, it's just that the houses are really expensive." Izio asks, "Is it too expensive?" Then Ashu thinks, his words remind me of Seoul's prices. Then the boy tells him, "A hut in this village is 20 gold, that's about the price of a horse. By the way, Mr. Izu, wait for a while. I want to give you something." The boy gives something to Izu and says, "This is our house. The first floor is a store. If you have any thoughts of working, you're always welcome." Isu asks, "So suddenly?" The boy says, looking at you, I can tell that you belong to a rich family, that's why I'm suggesting it, and it looks like you will be popular with women here, but of course you aren't my type. Then Isu replies, that's too bad, but you're not my type either. The boy laughs and says, I'll go back to my father now. While leaving, the boy tells him, if you get us another mirror I will sell it for you. Isu asks, you will? The boy says, yes, with this quality, if we put it in an auction it will be worth a lot. If you promise to supply us the most, we will give you the best rate. In the next scene, Su is back at his home and thinks, I want to go back again. He is feeling very hot, so he turns on the AC and thinks, when will this hot season end? I just want to live in Lawton, selling black pepper. Then he opens the fridge and takes out ice cream. He enjoys eating it and says, that soft ice cream inside this fluffy bread and the sweetness of the cookies and cream and the little cookie pieces embedded, it's giving a nice chewing texture. He becomes happy and finally decides that he will leave his job. Then he starts searching for the price of black pepper on the computer. He sees 1 kg of black pepper 101, which is very cheap. Then he thinks, if I were to sell it for 2 gold per pound, that means 4 gold per kilogram. I can get 4 million won for 10 kg. Thinking about all this, he becomes very happy and says, tomorrow I will go to the office and submit my resignation. In the next scene we see Izo going to his manager, Park. Manager Park tells him, I've told you a couple of times already, why are you changing the source code? You don't like it. Isu replies, distressed, but Manager Park shouts, shouldn't you be trying to find a more efficient way instead of just using open source? Isu hesitates and says, but that efficient source is where the error came from before. Then Isu starts thinking in his mind about all those things which require a lot of hard work as a programmer. Manager Park shouts again, hey, are you even listening to me? He drops some of the papers that Iyashu had worked on, then scolds him saying, are you thinking of using your dead parents as an excuse to zone out like that? Isu gets surprised and thinks to himself, is he really crazy? Then his manager continues, this is the problem with brats with weak mental health. They affect other innocent people too. Isu makes a decision, he will have to resign. In the next scene, he goes to someone's room. That guy asks him to sit politely. Isu says, I think I have to resign for some personal reasons. The guy asks, is this because of Manager Park? Isu tells him, till now, I've done everything they told me to do. I've heard every taunt and insult, but now they are saying terrible things about my parents. That's something I can't tolerate anymore. The boy replies, all of us are thinking of complaining against Manager Park. He continues, but the CEO is only listening to our complaints. He isn't able to do anything against Park, because very few people support us. That's the reality, and when it comes to Park's ability, he doesn't do a bad job. It's only because of that we haven't been able to fire him. Isu thinks, I could not even concentrate on my work while remembering. After what Manager Park had said, the man tells Ayo, I can understand. I kept you on the job because I knew your situation, but now things have worsened. I still understand where you're coming from. That's why I won't stop you from leaving. Even I don't know how long this company will survive, but I'm hopeful we'll get projects again. He adds, you are really a very good person. You should take care of yourself. Isu thinks to himself, if this dimension gate wasn't there, I would have had to give more years to Manager Park. Then he says to the man, thank you for understanding. I'd like to ask your permission to leave now. The man replies, okay. Coming out of the office, Ius thinks, I hope this company runs well even without me. Even if I go away, I believe the people who remain will take care of it. As for Manager Park, well, now I have nothing to do with him. In the next scene we see Asu preparing to go to another world with both black pepper and sugar to start a business. He says to himself, I had 41,000 won in my bank, and I had 100,000 won in cash. Together that makes 41,000 won, which I used to buy black pepper and sugar. He continues thinking, now I feel scared to try new things, but I can do anything, and nobody can stop me now. He travels to another world, and after looking at his room he says, this place is really comfortable. I even made a secret space to store the black pepper and sugar. It's under my bed. Then we see him visiting Aunt Humphrey's house. Aunt Humphrey thinks he has come to eat food, but he says he has something to show her, and also something to give her. Aunt asks, "What is this?" Isu replies, "These are barley flour, apricot seed flour, and honey. I'm going to make something called a mask pack. We'll mix the ingredients and apply them to our faces." Aunt asks, "All that on our face?" Isu says, "Yes, it will lighten blemishes and give our skin elasticity." The aunt feels a bit weird and says, "But I don't feel like putting food on my face." Isu happily replies, "This is how women in our continent take care of their skin. Try it once." Aunt agrees and wears the face mask, which looks very strange. Aunt Maggie didn't leave any gaps while applying the mask. Seeing this, Isu starts laughing and says, "Aunt, you should have left space around your eyes and nose." Aunt thanks him, and Isu says, "It's nothing." In the next scene, he returns to his room and says happily, "I like this freedom very much." This is how he starts to heal and how he spends his days in Seal City. Then there is a knock on his door. Isu opens it and sees Hans. Hans says, "I haven't seen you in a while, so I thought maybe you had left." Isu replies, No. Hans says, "Can you spare some time? Would you like to join me in picking hops?" Isu asks, "Hops, what's that?" Hans replies, "It's used in making beer. I make it myself. Anyway, how long are you planning to stay here?" Isu says, "I'm not sure. I'm going to talk to the village chief first." Hans says, "He'll be happy if you decide to stay for a long time. We always need manpower." He continues, "There's a lot to do: harvesting hay, feeding animals, fetching water, making beer, grinding grains, and I also have to protect the library." Then as Siu asks Hans, "Recently I saw a blonde-haired girl. Who is she?" Hans looks surprised and says, "Blonde hair? There's no such girl in our village. There's only one girl here, but she's a little weird." Isu asks, "Weird? How?" Hans explains, "It's been 10 years since she came here. She lives with her mother, but they don't interact much with the neighbors." Isu says, "Really?" Hans continues, "But they do everything they're asked to do. People have to work if they want to stay in the village after all." Isu asks, "Is that why you want me to go with you to pick hops?" Hans laughs and says, "That's not the only reason. If we think about it carefully, we realize that after taxes, most of our earnings are spent quickly. That's why when merchants come, they manage everything: rent, collection, supplies, and more." Isu comments, "So do you consider them your wallet?" Hans starts laughing. Then Isu thinks, the kid was right. Villagers here only make enough to get by. They'll take whatever you offer without bargaining. It's hard to imagine that in our modern society. I guess this is what it means to live like flowing water. It's good. Both of them arrive at the place they were heading to. Hen shows Isu a sample fruit and says, "You have to collect fruits that look like this." Isu takes one, smells it, and thinks, "It smells good, like a mixture of grass and fruit." Then he says, "I heard that beer in a world without hops tastes awful. It's fortunate there's hops here." Lost in thought, Hans calls him Mr. Isu. "What are you doing?" Isu says, "Nothing. I was just thinking about something. I just need to put this in the basket, right?" Hans says, "Yes." Then we see them collecting the hops together. A lot of fruit was filling the baskets. Hans said, "This is enough." Isu replied, "It finished earlier than I imagined." Then Hans said, "Let's go now." On the way home, Hans told Isu, "The firewood is running out. Can you come tomorrow as well? We have to shave the sheep before it gets hotter." "Do you know how?" Isu didn't say anything. Then Hans said, "I'll take this to the inn. By the way, you must be tired. Take some rest for a while." Isu said, "Okay, thanks," and then started running towards his home. He went home and took a bath, which made him feel really good. Then he thought to himself, a beer would be perfect after a nice shower. If I'm going to drink beer in another world, I should take some food there. He started thinking about a lot of food and said to himself, "I feel like eating all this." He began browsing food on his phone and planned to take some of it to the other world. After much thought, he picked a food item and ordered it online. After some time, the delivery arrived. He decided to take the food to the other world using his subspace pocket. He thought it'll be great to enjoy the taste of Korea in another world. After reaching the other world, he thought, but how can I eat this food? There's not even a plastic bowl here. If I think about it, I haven't brought any of my essential things here. So he went back and brought some bowls from Korea. At this moment, Hans arrived. Hans said, after coming inside, I was knocking at the door for a long time, but I couldn't hear anyone's voice. Isu, who was without clothes, was stunned to see Hans. Hans said, sorry, I came in without permission. Next time, I'll wait outside. Isu said, okay. Then both of them went to the garden and started talking. Hans said, I've been working hard to cover your quota while you weren't here. Isu asked, work? Hans replied, the hops we picked earlier. We had to clean the dust off the fruits to make beer. Since you weren't here, I did all of that myself. Isu was very surprised and said, thanks. He thought to himself, this place is nothing like Seal, but it's much better. Then he thanked Hans again and said, I'll help next time. By the way, why are you here again? And said, do you want to have dinner with me? Isu remembered the food he had planned to eat, the one he ordered and brought into this world. He wasn't sure what would happen to it, but still said yes to Hans. Seeing Isu's expression, Hans said, if you're saying yes, then why are you making that face? Isu said, no, it's not that I don't like it, it's just sudden. I actually cooked something. Hans was surprised and said, you know how to cook? Isu said, yes, but why do you sound so surprised? Hans said, nothing. You just seem like someone who only eats food cooked by others. Isu said, I was planning to share it with Aunt Humphrey. Then Hans said, let's eat at Aunt Humphrey's then. Isu asked, can we do that? Hans replied, of course, I'll get permission from my parents first. Don't start eating until I get there. Isu said, then I guess I'll use a wooden bowl. In the next scene, we see that Isu has prepared a delicious meal. Everyone is asking, what is this? Ya said, it's called roasted chicken. It's made by boiling chicken with different vegetables. Aunt Humphrey asked, lime stew? Isu replied, yes, it's similar. Eat it before it gets cold. After everyone had eaten their share, they started reacting so strangely that Isu became extremely nervous. Isu asked Hans, you don't like it, is it not to your taste? Hans said, this food, it just flipped my whole world. Isu said, what? Aunt Humphrey turned to her husband and asked, are you all right? Her husband replied, I lost consciousness because it was so delicious. Then Aunt Humphrey asked Isu, did you use spices in this food? Isu thought to himself, Aunt Humphrey is really experienced in cooking. That's why she noticed so quickly that I spiced up the food. Then he said aloud, yes, it's a common spice used in my hometown. Aunt Humphrey asked, is it not your type, Hans? Hans shouted, it's completely my type. Aunt Humphrey's husband said, it's my type too. Then Aunt Humphrey said to everyone, start eating now. Everyone enjoyed the meal very much. The next morning Isu said, all right, let's go sell some black pepper. While he was searching for a merchant, he saw a girl riding a horse. Isu thought to himself, she is very beautiful. He noticed people around her and wondered, is she a noble? Seeing a man standing next to her, Isu thought, how cool does this guy look? Suddenly the girl looked at Isu excitedly and said, my love. Isu thought nervously, loving me, this is the first time I'm hearing something like this. The girl got down from the horse and started walking toward him. But then we see she walks right past Isu and goes to Aunt Maggie, who is standing behind him. We find out the girl's name is Rose. Rose said to Aunt Maggie, how long have you been working here? You're the reason I keep sneaking out of the house. Aunt Maggie replied, then I'll have to leave this place now. Rose said, what? I might die if I don't eat the food you cook for me every day. Rose rudely says, I'll tell you this again. I like to live my life freely, and if I had made up my mind, I would have been the best chef in the royal family in no time. Then Rose adds in horror, if you refuse to make my food, I'll cut off that hand and take it with me. Isu thinks to himself, how scary she is. Aunt Humphrey says, then you can't eat the food I make anymore. Rose says to her, that means hurry up and give me the most delicious food. I brought the ingredients, so use them as much as you want. Aunt Humphrey replies, okay. Now go and wash up first. The girl runs off to freshen up. Before leaving, she says, if you add black pepper, I'm not going to let you go. Aunt Humphrey says, that's not possible. Isu thinks to himself, so she hates black pepper. Hans says to Isu, Miss JJ is so beautiful, right? Isu replies, yeah. Hans adds, of course she's a bit bad-tempered. Hans is about to say more when Rose suddenly arrives and says, bad-tempered? But who? Seeing Rose up close makes Hans's heart skip a beat. Rose says, don't be scared. It's all good. I was furious when that rumor about my bad temper started spreading, but now it's too late to take it back. I bet my driver played a huge role in spreading that rumor. It's a really cunning one. Then pointing at Isu, she says, by the way, who's this person? Isu replies, let me introduce myself. I'm an adventurer, Isu from Korea. Hans adds, he'll be staying in the village for a while. Rose starts asking a lot of questions all at once. What is this Korea? It's my first time hearing of it. It must be far away from here. Which family are you from? How much wealth do you have? Hearing so many questions at once, Iozi's head starts spinning. Just then the same man from before arrives and takes Miss Rose away. Rose shouts, hey, let go of me, let me go. Isu looks at the girl and thinks, what a crazy young girl. Then Isu asks Hans, her name is Jace Rose. Hans replies, yes, you can call her Miss JJ for short. Isu says, I see, Miss JJ must be very interested in me. Isu pokes Hans and asks, do you like Miss JJ? Hans replies, what are you saying? It's not like that. He continues, Mrs. Humphrey's food is really good. Even if I use the same recipe and ingredients, it doesn't taste as good as hers. Just then, a swan becomes very happy after seeing a man and says, Mr. Joseph, I am here. The man named Joseph replies, all right, Hans, get me a beer. Hans brings the beer. Isu asks the beer's price and Hans says, we don't charge money today, it's Miss JJ's day, after all. Uncle Joseph says to Isu, since we're here, let's have a drink together. Isu replies, yeah, of course. By the way, I heard him call you Mr. Joseph, and I'm Isu, sir. If you don't mind, may I ask what kind of business you do? Uncle Joseph replies, I sell spices in Hermania City. Isu asks, by any chance, do you know Mr. Mugo? Uncle Joseph says, you mean Colin Mugo? Of course I know him. We are very close. Isu asks, how do you know him? He came here last week. Uncle Joseph asks, did he perhaps sell some black pepper here? Isu replies, yes, but he said he only got a little of it. Uncle Joseph exclaims, come on. Isu, confused, asks, any problem? Then Uncle Joseph says, I'm the owner of the biggest spice shop in Hermania. I couldn't even get a grain of black pepper because the Meditz family swept it all up. No wonder the Meditz bathe in pepper water. There's even a rumor they use pepper as perfume. Isu thinks, that sounds like the other way around. Uncle Joseph then asks, that man Mugo, how did he even get a little bit of black pepper? Isu thinks, come to think of it, wasn't that what Hans ate before? It wasn't that good back then, would it be any better with beer? While thinking, he starts eating something very hard and doesn't like it at all. Isu says to Uncle Joseph, I don't think Miss JJ actually likes black pepper though. Uncle Joseph says, don't even say that. There's big trouble in Pising because of that. Isu asks Uncle Joseph, were you planning to set fire to the carriage carrying black pepper? Uncle Joseph replies, it was pretty hard to distract the knights. Isu says, wow. Just then Rose returns and says to both of them, don't you both think you shouldn't talk about me behind my back? Isu suddenly gets scared. Uncle Joseph says to Rose, of course not. Come, have a seat. Have a drink too. Rose tells Uncle Joseph, how about we steal that carriage? We'll earn a lot if we succeed. Then she picks up Iosi's beer and drinks it. Rose asks Isu, do you want this beer back? Isu replies, I don't want it. Rose asks Isu to answer the question she had asked earlier. Isu says, my father was a scholar and my mother was just a regular housewife. I was traveling after graduating from an academy. Rose says, that must be why you look rich. So since you enrolled in an academy, you aren't just a commoner, right, sir? Rose suddenly changes her tone toward Isu. Isu responds, in our continent, even commoners can enroll in an academy. Rose asks, really? Isu replies, yes. Then Rose asks, what about women? Isu replies, women can enroll too. After that, Rose says, then we'll run away to that continent right now. Her bodyguard interrupts, don't even dream about it, miss. Then Maggie brings food, which makes Rose very happy. Rose is about to eat the food when her bodyguard stops her and says, I can't let you eat something that looks suspicious. I've never seen this type of food before. Rose says, then should I starve? You really want that, don't you? Then she begins to eat silently. She enjoys the food so much that she feels like she's in heaven. Maggie says, I'll explain about the food. Rose suddenly interrupts. Wait, I'll explain. The soup has the taste of soft cream, a mix of veggies, butter, and milk all together. The texture of the barley popping in my mouth feels so refreshing. The scent of truffle mushroom is added, making it luxurious. In this it's a food called potato. It's my first time trying it. It's somehow crumbly yet soft and tasty. Isu is very surprised to see Rose's refined sense of taste. Rose says, of course it was magic. I spent some money on some wizard bastards. I did well, right? Uncle Joseph says, yes, you did really well. Isu thinks to himself, it looks like she isn't really fond of wizards. I wonder how the soup tastes. It's like clam chowder, delicious. But it wouldn't have been easy to harmonize the taste of potatoes and clams. She made this with ingredients she had never even seen before. She's great. Rose snaps, don't overreact and sit down. I only said that because it was so delicious. Then she looks at something and asks, what is that? Humphrey answers, cabbage. It's pickled in boiling water with lemon juice, raspberry juice, and bay leaves. I also added sugar to give you when you arrived. Rose gets very excited and says, I love you, Maggie. Everyone will suspect me if I kidnap Maggie, right? Her bodyguard says, if you want, I can kidnap her for you. Rose says, hey, don't say that out loud. In the next scene, Isu says, now that we're full, let's go sell some black pepper. He steps outside and admires the night view, thinking, it's definitely different from Seoul's sky. He goes to Uncle Joseph's house to sell the black pepper. Uncle Joseph is very surprised to see so much of it. Uncle Joseph asks, how did you get that? Isu replies, I bought it from my hometown. Uncle Joseph says, I'll buy them all. Isu says, I have about 20 malems. Uncle Joseph offers, I'll give you 3 gold coins per pound. Isu thinks to himself, that's a total of 60 golds. That means 6 million won in cash. He is very shocked. Uncle Joseph gives him the money. Isu says, isn't it uncomfortable to carry such a huge amount of cash? Uncle Joseph replies, that's why we hire merchants. We were just lucky this time that we met Miss JJ and her people along the way. No bandits are stupid enough to attack people accompanying the Midit's family. The next morning, Isu wakes up feeling much better. He says, so this is what rich people wake up to, but it feels kind of awkward having this much money. He thinks people here normally use just 3 gold a month to live. How much should I spend? Thinking about it, he starts looking at his wallet. Then he decides, shall I go have a look at the market first? He heads to the market and goes to the candle shop. He asks the price of candles. The merchant says, oil candles are 5 copper per pound, and wax candles are 2 silver coins. Isu says, give me 4 plelbs of oil candles. Then a girl enters. Seeing her, AC remembers she used to live next to his house. The girl has come to buy fish. The shopkeeper says, that's an expensive fish. It requires magic to catch, so we only get it if someone places an order. The girl says, then I would like to order some. The shopkeeper says, you need to pay 5 silver in advance. It'll take about 2 months to arrive. Is that okay? Isu is shocked and thinks, 500,000 won for some fish. The girl says, then just give me 1 cooked red herring. The shopkeeper replies, the total is 2 copper. The girl says, wait, I'll go get a container. Isu thinks to himself, I guess I was wrong about her being a spoiled blonde. In the next scene, Rose comes to the market and starts calling for Isu. Isu says, Miss JJ, did you come here to buy something? Rose replies, I was looking for you. Yaja seems surprised. Then Rose asks nervously, would you go on a walk with me? Isu says, okay. During the walk, Rose asks, I heard you sold black pepper to Joseph. Isu responds nervously, did Mr. Joseph say that? He thinks to himself, it would have been better to keep that a secret, tough luck. Rose says, no, I just met him this morning, and I could smell it. Isu thinks, smelled it. I guess we can say she's very sensitive to black pepper. Isu says, actually I really like black pepper. I bought some from my hometown and sold it here to get some money for transportation. Rose replies, I don't understand why people are crazy for such a thing. Isu wonders, is it because she's just sick of it, or does she really hate it? Then Asuru says, but I like it. It's really delicious when used on ramen, when black pepper is sprinkled as a topping on spicy and sweet ramen soup. Rose asks, are you eating something? Isu replies, no, it's nothing. Maybe the reason you hate it is because some guy just uses it excessively. Rose answers, it's not that kind of problem. I don't care about that. It just makes me sick when I even smell it. Rose gets very angry, and everyone nearby asks her to calm down. She then says, sorry, I've just been a bit on edge lately. Isu says, it's all right. Then Rose says to Aishu, you're also some kind of noble, right? Traveling around while hiding your true identity. My eldest brother is also traveling to gain experience. Isu asks, so did you say you wanted to study? Rose replies, no, I want to inherit my family's business. Even if you can't inherit their business, can't you at least get a store in the capital if you talk to your father? Isu asks. Rose replies, no, it won't work. My father is planning to marry me into a wizard family. You know, wizards are descendants of elves, and people serve elves like gods. Even the families who marry into wizard families are praised, as if they were chosen by the gods. For that honor, he's going to marry me off to a wizard family. Isu says, it must be hard for you to face an arranged marriage. Then Rose says, so take me to your continent. I can offer you 5,000 golds. Isu responds, I understand how you feel, but would you be all right in a foreign land with no family members? Isu gets emotional and says, one day I suddenly lost my parents and got lost. That saying time heals everything was a lie. The more time passed, the more I missed the days I spent with my parents. Rose says, it looks like your parents were good people. Isu replies, yes. Then Rose says, actually my parents are good people too. It's just that it made me realize they're ultimately like all the others. She continues, it's not important to them whether there's something I like or hate. They just want me to live up to the standards adults made. Then Rose adds, well, my house is about 4 days away from here, so you can visit sometime. Isu says, okay. After I get used to this place. Rose says jokingly, it would be better if you kidnapped Maggie too on your way there. Isu replies, I guess I should rather not go then. Rose says again, I will give you 5,000 golds. Isu jokes, wouldn't it be better to give that to Humphrey instead? After the conversation ends, Rose leaves. Then Iyasu sees an old man and goes to talk to him. The man already knows Iyasu's name. He asks, are you going to stay in this village? Isu replies, so you knew me, I should have visited you first. Sorry I'm late. The man is actually the head of the village. The old man says, it's okay, go ahead with your plans. We're already like neighbors now. Isu says, okay. That's it. So can I just live here? Isu is very surprised by how easily the village accepts him. In the next scene we see a car arriving in the village. Maggie shouts, old men. She gets angry and says, where the hell have you been? Oh my god, you got a kid now? We then see some people arriving bringing a baby with them. Maggie asks the lady, is the baby healthy? The lady replies, yes, he's a perfectly healthy boy. Maggie gets emotional seeing the baby. We come to know that the woman is Maggie's daughter-in-law and the baby is her grandson. Isu feels very happy witnessing the moment. In the next scene, Hans comes to Isu's house. Isu says, "What is it? Do you need more firewood?" Hans says, "No, let's go see the baby." Both of them go to see the baby and think that he's very cute. Then Hans says, "Mr. Isu, I need to tell you something." Isu asks, "What is it?" Hans says, "A noble is trying to buy our village." Isu asks, "Seriously, what do you mean by that?" Hans says, "I mean our village could be sold at any moment now." Isu says, "What? Isn't that a serious problem?" Just then, the baby starts laughing. Seeing this, Isu says, "Well, maybe it's not as important as this moment." Hans says, "I guess so." In the next scene, Isu brings Hans to a different place and asks him, "By the way, that thing you mentioned earlier, isn't that a serious problem?" Hans asks, "What? Which one?" Isu says, "The thing you told me about the noble." Hans says, That, actually it doesn't have much to do with you. You're a traveler. You can leave at any time." Isu thinking to himself, that kind of hurt. Hans continues, "Anyway, there's something I wanted to give you." He hands over some books and says, "This one is about one of the nobles I like. It can help you better understand this place." Isu replies, "Thank you." In the next scene, Isu returns to Korea using the gate. Looking at his budget, he begins thinking about what he can sell this time. He remembers the girl in the market who was buying fish. Later that night, he goes to the market to buy something. He sees a lot of food and ends up eating to his heart's content. Then he thinks, let's take a walk to digest all this food. While walking, he reaches the fish market. Seeing so many fish makes him very happy. He spots a fish that looks just like the one the girl was buying. The shopkeeper asks, "Do you need some mackerel fish?" Isu replies, "Yes, but please remove the organs." The shopkeeper says, "Okay." Isu buys a lot of that fish, takes them home and thinks, "It's been a while since I had proper mackerel." He also finds a sauce called samjang. Isu says, "They don't have samjang sauce there, so let's make something tasty using samjang." He continues thinking, "I learned this when I was studying abroad, and lastly, if I mix in some nuts, then it's done." He collects all the ingredients to eat the fish and says, "I took some barley just in case, because porridge is more common than rice in that place." Then Eo remembers what his mother once said. Controlling fire is essential when cooking rice in a pot. You should fry the outer layer when frying fish so that the oil comes out, which prevents the fish from sticking to the pan. Won-soo gets a little emotional remembering his mother's words. In the next scene, he goes to the house of his neighbor. The girl's mother opens the door and asks, "Who is it?" Isu says, "I'm Iyasu living next door." The girl's mom replies, "Hi, I am Mesa, but what brought you here then?" Isu says, "I just realized that I didn't introduce myself properly, so I decided to treat you to a meal." Then the girl comes and asks her mother, "What happened, mother?" Her mother replies, "Mr. Aishu just moved into the house next door." She then tells Isu, "This is my daughter. Her name is Hyan." Both mother and daughter are quite surprised that Iyasu is suddenly asking her to join him for a meal. Isu says, "I saw your daughter in the market looking for some mackerel fish, so I went to the neighboring village and bought some. I remembered that if it's all right with you, may I cook it?" That girl's mother says, "Sure. I wonder how it tastes." Isu says, "I hope it will suit your taste." "Okay then, let's eat in my backyard." Later in the next scene we see him cooking fish with great fun. He thinks I should fry the fish like this to make it crispy on the outside but soft on the inside. He's done cooking the fish, which looks very tasty. The three of them sit together to eat. Isu says, "This is steamed cabbage, but take a piece of mackerel fish along with some sauce on it, then wrap it and eat it." That girl's mother asks Is, "Did you live in a coastal village before coming here?" Isu replies, "Well, somehow, yes." Her mother eats the fish and after finishing, she says, "You have a talent for cooking, especially this sauce. It's my first time tasting something like this. It's really delicious." Isu feels very happy to hear the compliment and says, "I'm glad that you liked it. Now I want to try too." He finds it so tasty after eating it. He thinks I am in the ocean. He also thinks his mind about the cabbage's sweetness and the barley's texture suits well, but still, this part of the fish is the most delicious one. That girl's mother says, people who know how to eat should start eating from here. By the way, you should throw away the bones. Why would you eat those? Isu thinks. Somehow they don't seem like any ordinary mother and daughter. After eating, the girl says to Isu, thanks for the meal. I will clean the dishes and return them later. Isu says, it's okay, I will do that. That girl's mother says, let her be. She just wants to repay you somehow. Then she holds Isu's hand and says, thank you so much, I will treat you to a meal someday too. Isu says, okay, call me anytime. A scene of a few days later is shown. Isu thinks, it's been a month. He further thinks, I get very tired doing all that work with Hans. Just then, Hans arrives. Isu thinks that Hans has come to call him to do that work again. Isu asks in a very weary tone, what are we going to do today? Hans says, it isn't for work. Would you like to go to Lushan village with me? He is surprised to hear the name of the new village, but then he says, yes. Hans becomes very happy. In the next scene, Isu starts vomiting profusely due to traveling on such a dangerous road. He thinks, I should have taken meds for motion sickness. That was one murderous road. Then Hans says, there is someone I have to meet, so I will go that way. Isu says, okay, let's meet at this spot after about an hour. I will be at the pub if it gets too late. Hans replies, okay. Then he goes to meet someone. Isu thinks that he can take advantage of this opportunity to do some shopping in this village. Then Yu goes to a fabric shop and asks the shopkeeper, what kind of fabric is this? The shopkeeper says, you are really observant. This is a new kind of fabric called cambric. It's commonly used for handkerchiefs, curtains, and clothes. These are pretty popular among the nobles. Isu says, it's really soft, by the way, how much for it? The shopkeeper says, 1 gold each. Isu says, okay, then give me 2 of those. The shopkeeper asks, anyway, where are you going to use these? Isu says, baby diapers. The shopkeeper is very surprised. In the next scene, Isu is about to go to another place when he sees a swordsman holding a heavy sword. Machiu thinks to himself, I want to try raising that sword. The way the swordsman looks at Aishu makes him scared. Then he sees Miss JJ going by. Miss JJ also sees him. Miss JJ asks Iu, what are you doing here? Isu says, I followed Hans here. By the way, were you just passing by this place, right? Rose says, it's not that, I came out to observe. Haven't you heard the news? Isu asks, what news? Rose says, the new noble bought this land. They will be neighbors of my family. That's why I came here to observe. Anyway, what are you bringing around the town like that? Isn't that the cambric cloth? Isu says, yes, and Humphrey got a grandson, so I wanted to give her a gift. Rose gets shocked after hearing this news and says, what? Then I won't sit still either. She asks Isu to follow her. Then both of them go to a shop where Rose shows him soap and many other things. She says, I would like to give her more, but then Maggie will refuse to accept it, or tell her that I will visit soon and that I would like to congratulate her. Isu says, I will, and if you hear any important news about the village, please tell me. Then Rose says, the people in Loden must be worried too, aren't they? If the new nobles buy the land in that village too, I have to get Maggie out before that happens. Oja thinks, her eyes don't seem normal. Then she says, you think I am obsessed, right? Whatever, this can't be helped. Then she calls the waiter to give her a special meal. Izu thinks, in his mind, a special meal? Rose says, normally every inn has a special meal for the nobles. Their special meal arrives. Isu doesn't like it. The food was not good at all. Rose says, try it. Isu says, thanks for the meal, then he eats the food. After eating it he feels like vomiting because the taste was too bad. Raya says smilingly, what do you think? Isn't it tasty? Try the bread too. Then he comes home with Hans. In the next scene, he is just thinking about the food and says, it's really killing me. Now I understand why Miss JJ is obsessed with Aunt Humphrey. I know that Aunt Humphrey shouldn't leave Lodan no matter what. In the next scene we see Isu returning to Seal City with the help of the gate. He hurriedly opens the freezer and thinks, I am sure there is some plum syrup in there. He gets a lot of relief after having a few drinks. After that he says, something chilly and fresh is the best when feeling full. Now I feel better. Then he thinks while looking at the laptop. Anyway, is there anything else I can sell other than black pepper? I'm kind of getting sick of selling black pepper. Even the subspace pocket is a waste to only use for black pepper. Then something comes to his mind and he starts searching for something. Then we see a scene, a few days later. Yesu's trying to grow some crops by digging the soil. He thinks, there are other things I can do instead of selling things. If I grow these myself, my stock would be much more than the quantity I can bring from Korea. Then Hans comes there and asks, Mr. Isu, what are you doing? Isu says, I just wanted to plant something. Hans asks, what are you planting? Isu says, do you remember the soup Aunt Humphrey cooked when Miss JJ came? The veggies in there that's called potato, and I am planting those. Isu continues, it's easy to cook, quite delicious, and has a lot of uses. Hans says, okay, so invite me too someday. Isu says, sure, I will cook you some food called potato jian. Hans asks, potato jian? Isu says, yes, it's made by grinding some potatoes and deep frying it like a pancake on a frying pan. Hans says, that's a promise. Okay, Isu says, I will keep my promise as long as these grow well. After that, Hans says, by the way, the merchants have arrived, let's go together. Isu says, okay. In the next scene we see the same kid to whom Isu gave the mirror. His name is Mino. Isu recognizes him, and Mino is very happy to see him because Isu remembered him even after so long. Then Mino says, the mirror was sold for 5 golds. Do you perhaps have more of those? Isu says, I have about 5 more. Then Mino says, I will take it later, and goes away from there. Then Isu thinks, if Aunt Humphrey has made sausages today, I am wondering how tasty it will be to eat. I want to eat too. Just then Hans comes there and gives some food to Isu and asks him to eat it. Isu looks at the food and thinks it looks similar to salami. Then he eats the food, which makes him feel very salty. Hans asks, don't you like it? Isu says nervously, it's a bit salty, but I think it would be better if I ate this alongside some other food. Hans says, we have no choice since it has to be preserved for a long time. It will go bad quickly if we don't use at least that much salt. Then Aunt Humphrey comes in with some food. She says to Hans over there, stop talking and help me serve the food. Hans says, okay. Isu, looking at the food, sees there are only sausages and bread for today. Then he thinks, I am sure it will taste good since Aunt Humphrey made this. Then he sees some people sitting in front of him eating food. At the same time, Hans calls him, who is at the dining table with his family. Hans invites him to have dinner with his family. Hans's family also happily invites Isu. Hans's father says to Isu, I have heard a lot about you. Then everyone says, thanks for the meal. Isu eats the food and thinks it still tastes alright when I eat this with bread. The scent of the fermented meat and this chewy texture is this similar to salami too. Then while eating, he starts thinking about food in his mind. Then he asks, anyway, I don't see Miss Mesa and Hyen. Hans's mother says, I heard that Mesa isn't feeling well nowadays. Isu is shocked. Then Hans's mother gives some food to Isu, and says, can you take the leftover food to your place? Isu says, of course. Then when he starts leaving from there, he hears a lot of shouting and fighting. When Isu hears the voice, he understands that it is the voice of Hyen and her mother fighting. Then Hyen comes out of the room in anger. She and Isu come face to face, but Hyen doesn't say anything and goes away in anger. It is then that the mother comes out to call her, and then they start coughing up a lot of blood. In the next scene, we see Isu and the girl's mother at the dining table. Isu says, please eat before the food gets cold. The girl's mom replies, I will eat together with Hyen when she comes back. We see that she is very worried about her daughter. Then she says that Hyen isn't her real daughter, she is her nanny, who's been looking after her ever since she was young. Isu thinks to himself, so that's why I felt weird that time. I think there is a problem with her attitude too. The girl's nanny says, well, young miss doesn't have a warm attitude, but she isn't a bad child either. There's a valid reason why she shouted at me like that. Isu asks, is it somehow related to why you told the whole village that she's your daughter? The nanny replies, because we've kept this a secret. Our miss has a lot of talents. She wants to use those talents to earn money in a big city and get me treated, but I'm not allowing her. She's crazy. Isu thinks to himself, I also understand Hyen. Even I would have felt frustrated if someone important to me didn't want to get treated for an illness. Then the nanny says to Isu that she has a favor to ask. Isu asks, what is it? The nanny says, when I die, please help our Miss Hyen to settle down in this place. The next day we see Isu going to his parents' graves. After getting there, he repeats in his mind what the girl's nanny told him. After that he says aloud, it won't be easy, but I'll try. Then he remembers something his own nanny once said. That's a lot more convincing to hear than you confidently telling me that you would definitely do it just to keep me happy. In the next scene, Iyasu thinks to himself, I am not someone who is good enough to be responsible for a girl that I barely even know. And it doesn't feel like Hyen is someone with whom I can get along well. But the reason why I said that was because I know the feeling of being left alone. In the following scene, we see Mino and Isu. Isu gives him the remaining 5 mirrors, which makes Mino very happy. Mino says, okay, I'll give you 3 golds per mirror, and I'll give you more if these get sold at a higher price. Isu says, you work with your conscience, huh? Then Isu asks, what about soap instead of mirrors? Mino replies, soaps aren't in as much demand as mirrors. Mino continues, anyway, Mr. Isu, what are you? Isu, surprised, says, I said I'm an adventurer. Mino says, what I mean is, are you a noble or a commoner? You have a scent that I can only smell from nobles. Commoners can't take a shower as frequently because water is rare. Isu asks, then how do the people in Armenia take a bath? Mino replies, there are several public baths that the wizard's family runs. Even the commoners use them because the price is affordable. Isu asks, the wizard's family? Mino says yes, Armenia doesn't have much water, so they gather weather with magic. Isu thinks to himself, then this country is so bad that they can't even survive without the wizards. In the next scene we see Hyen sitting next to her nanny. Her nanny says, Miss, sorry for not being able to be with you till the end. Hyen replies, you've been protecting me for 30 years. You did your best and you've done enough, so you don't have to cry. Leave peacefully. The nanny's health deteriorates. Everyone understands that she will not live much longer. It is time for her to leave. The nanny starts crying a lot, then she dies. Isu thinks to himself, Hyen eventually didn't even cry during Nanny's funeral. He visited her house to share some food, but he only saw the empty dishes in front of the house, not her. The next day, Isu returns to his home in Sea City. He goes to a cake shop and remembers a scene of his parents. His mother was eating bread. Isu had asked, are you eating bread again? His mother replied, I can live without rice, but I can't live without bread. His father joked, do you love bread more than me? His mother started thinking seriously, which made his father worried. We see that Asu's family was very happy back then. Back in the present, Isu buys the same bread. Then he goes to another world and starts eating his mother's favorite bread. He sees a packet on the table. At first he doesn't remember what it contains, but then suddenly, he remembers it's the same fabric, soap and lotion that he and Rose had bought for Maggie's grandchild. He sets out to give it to Maggie. Maggie asks, what is that? Isu says, Cambry cloth, and I also put soap and lotion from Miss J in here. It's a gift for getting a grandchild. Maggie says, oh my, you are so thoughtful. Isu says, it's nothing much. Then Maggie says, compared to you, the males in my family are so lazy. Isu gets nervous and says, I'll see you later. He thinks to himself, I better get out of here for the sake of peace in this family. Then he goes to see the crop he had grown long ago. He sees Hyan there and is very surprised. He says, "It's been a while. Were you looking at the potato flower?" Then he plucks a flower and gives it to her. He says, "How is it? It's simple but beautiful, right?" Hyan looks at him with a strange expression and says, "Why did you pluck that flower?" Isu says nervously, "You should pluck the flower for the potato to grow well." Hyan asks, "What is a potato?" Isu replies, "Something you eat. It's buried under the ground. Right now, we can harvest it after a month. I'll let you taste it." Hyan says, "Forget it." Isu thinks to himself, "Anyway, is she eating properly? Looks like she lost some weight." Then Isu asks Hyan, "Do you perhaps like bread?" Hyan asks, "Breaded?" Isu says, "Yes, I got some of it recently. I like bread." Hyan gets excited. She says, "Come on in then. Let's eat together." Then she eats the bread and Iu thinks, "Looks like she loves bread too. But I was wondering why her hair color altered so frequently, so she was indeed a witch." While thinking this, Iu starts looking at her carefully. At that time, Hyan asks, "Is it your first time seeing someone eating bread?" Isu gets nervous again and says, "No, I was just amazed by your ears." Hyan says, "You could have just asked if I'm a witch." Isu replies, "How could I when you were trying to hide it?" Hyan says, Yeah. Anyway, you better not tell this to anybody else. And don't talk to me when I'm eating." Isu is surprised by her behavior and says, "Okay." After finishing the food, Hyan says, "I get it now. You can fool the others but not me." Isu doesn't understand what she means. Then Hyan asks, "You aren't an ordinary person, right?" Isu, sounding very nervous, replies, "What do you mean?" Then he thinks, "Did she somehow notice that I came from another dimension?" Then Hyan says, "You're a wizard, a bread wizard." Isu is absolutely stunned by her words. Then Hyan says, "The texture is soft but not greasy. The egg and butter give a good taste to the bread and the scent spreads all over my mouth. Unless you are a bread wizard, it's not possible for someone to make such delicious bread." Then she adds, "You fed me such delicious bread. In return, I'll help you take care of the potato flowers." Isu says, Sure. Then Hyan says, "I also haven't forgotten about the cooked mackerel. I will definitely repay you for that too." Isu says, "Okay, just tell me if you want to eat that again." Hyan says, "I hate fish." Isu replies, "That's good to know. Anyway, what kind of magic do you use?" Hyan responds, "You want me to tell you that for free?" Isu says, "I don't think I'm asking that for free." In the next scene, we see that Ieyasu has to make bread again. He collects all the ingredients and thinks pound cake has simple ingredients and is easy to make. Traditionally, flour, egg, sugar, and butter are mixed. It's also delicious if we add veggies and bacon. Chocolate and green tea are good too. Also lemon. In the next scene, he starts making bread and thinks, will it be tasty for her? I don't know what she'll say. Just then, Hyan arrives. She asks, "Is that bread? When can we eat it? You do know that I'm diligently harvesting the potato flowers, right?" Isu says, "How would I know if those fell off because of the wind or if it was really you? That's the information I want in return for making this bread." Hyan says, "I am a witch with the power to control water." Isu gets shocked and thinks, is she somehow related to the family that manages the water in Armenia? Then he says, "Can you show me some magic?" Hyan replies, "Give me bread. Delicious ones, 10 of them. And cook it faster." Isu says, Yes. The cake is ready." Hyan can't wait to eat the cake. She asks Io to cut it quickly. Isu says, "Just wait a while," but the cake doesn't come out of the bowl. Then Isu remembers that he forgot to butter the bowl. Isu says, "It's a little burnt at the edges, but try it. I wonder what it tastes like." They both start eating the cake.
Hyan loves it.
Isu thinks, this cake is very sweet. Then he asks, "How does it taste?" Hyan says, "It's delicious." Isu replies, "Is that so?" Then Hyan says, "Anyway, do you have any milk?" Isu says, "Do I owe you milk? Go get it by yourself from the cow." Hyan says, "I hate animals. By the way, why do you live alone?" Isu replies in a sad tone, my parents passed away. Hyen says in a cold tone, it's better for useless parents to die early. This reminds Isu that her grandmother had said that Hyen has a problem in her heart. That's why she behaves like this. He starts wondering, does this mean Hyen is a psychopath? Then Isul asks, what do you feel when you see an animal? Hyen replies, I feel like killing them. Isu says, what? Hyen asks, do you also think that something is wrong with what I just said? Oziu thinks, how did she end up like this? Then he says, I came to this place to get some comfort. You should go now. Then Hyen asks, why? Are you going to finish the rest of the bread all by yourself? Then Isu gives her a piece of bread. After that, Hyen says, you are a good person. In the next scene, we see Isu lying on his bed, thinking to himself, I understand what it feels like to lose someone important to you. In such a situation, we don't have enough energy to consider other people's feelings, but still, Hyen is a bit worse. In the next scene, we see some people brutally killing the residents of a nearby village. During the fight, one man escapes with great difficulty. In the following scene, that boy is brought in front of the village head. The boy has fainted. When he regains consciousness, he becomes very frightened. The village head says, calm down. You passed out as soon as you got off the carriage. Then the boy says, Father, hurry up. Lucian village was attacked. They might come this way, so we better go. The village head says, it's all right. If they were really planning to attack this place, they would have arrived here already. Izuo is also present and hears everything. He thinks, he's right. The two villages are only 2 hours apart. If they were coming, they'd be here by now. Then the village head says to everyone, it's late already, let's gather again next time. The next day, Miss Ja's bodyguard comes and announces something. He tells everyone, I'm going to stay here for a while and observe their movements. Seeing this soldier, all the villagers start asking, what will happen next? At that very moment, Izu arrives. Izu asks, why is the Mioth family stepping into this? The soldier replies, all I can say is that we were also affected. If you choose representatives among you, I will assign a knight to go there with you. In the next scene, Izu thinks, this is weird. A lot of injured, but no casualties. I'm sure there's a reason why they only injured those people and didn't kill them. Then Ashu goes to Hyen. He first calls Hyen, but she does not come out. Then he says bread, which makes Hyen come out immediately. Izu thinks, I'm sure she'd even follow a stranger if they offered her bread. Then Hyen says, I'll make you some bread. Izu asks, instead, can I ask you something? What's with the poker face? Hyen replies, what do you want? Izu asks, what are the positions of the nobles in the Man Nation? You know, something like count and marquis. Hyen says, we have counts but no marquises. Izu says, oh, elaborate then. Hyen replies angrily, one question is enough. Then she continues, from now on asking questions isn't free. 1 bread loaf per question. Izu says, you are a savage robber. Besio is then forced to go and make a cake. Hyen asks, are you going to make bread with these this time? She gets very happy. Then Iso starts telling the recipe while making it. He says, first I'm going to put this mingle and mix it several times, then put some oil on the pan and place the batter on it. Hyen says, cook it already, I'm hungry. Isu says, we have to cook this slowly on a slim fire. Hyen says, you must not be good yet with your magic. Isu says, this isn't magic. We see that he makes a pancake. When it's ready, Hyen is just staring at the food. Isu says, stop staring and eat it. Then she eats it and likes it very much. She asks, what is this? How can a piece of bread be this soft? Isu says, that's called a pancake. Then Hyen eats the whole pancake. Isu says, if you're eating, can you answer my question now? Hyen says, don't be so impatient. Isu says, oh, sorry. Then she says, first, the highest position is the emperor. That bastard rules this entire kingdom. Isu asks, are you really allowed to say it that way? Hyen says, I am going to kill him with my own hands anyway. Isu thinks, what a troublesome kid she is. Then he says, okay, continue. Hyen says, Next is the Duke. It's a position given to the wizard family and the indirect royal descendants. Next are the counts and the rest of the nobles. Isu asks, "That's all?" Heian says, "Next are the people who buy the certificate of nobility." Isu asks, "How much is that certificate?" Heian replies, 5,000 gold coins. Then Isu asks, "By the way, why do you want to kill the king?" Heian replies, "He is the enemy of my kind." Izo asks, "But don't the other wizards get along well with the emperor?" Heian shouts, "Don't act like you know everything, you aren't even a wizard." Isu says, "What a terrible mistake on my part." Then Heian says, "Anyway, I'm going to go to Hermania City. From now on, give me 1 gold per question." Isu asks, "You don't have a transportation fee." Then Iyasu asks again, "Bread or gold, choose one." Sachin says, "That's a hard question, I'll think about it." In the next scene we see Iao riding in a horse-drawn carriage somewhere. He begins vomiting again due to motion sickness. He thinks, "Without the pill for motion sickness, I'm no better than a dog." Heian says, "Mr. Isu, are you all right?" Isu replies, "Yes." Then he asks, "Anyway, the village looks so much better in just 2 weeks." Heian says, "Didn't I tell you?" "Okay, now I'm telling you." Actually, the Pang family spent a huge sum of money and hired a healing wizard. They helped to cure the villagers and restore the village. Izu asks, "Pang family? The one who was buying the lands here?" Heian replies, "That's right." Then Isu thinks, the land they were planning to buy just got ambushed by bandits, but they restored it for free. Then Isu asks, "What's their condition?" Heian says, "Condition? Actually, they don't say anything about a condition." Isu thinks, this is suspicious. Then he says, "Anyway, I'm glad the people are okay." Heian says, "Right, then shall we meet here after finishing our own business?" Isu says, "Sure." In the next scene Isu says, "I finally sold all the black pepper I brought." He sees some people talking in front of him. One man says, "I met the bandits on my way here to Count Maith's territory." Another man says, "Really?" Then the first man continues, "They say the bandits are wandering around with this area as their center. But I heard Count Meath isn't even putting on a guard." The second man says, "What if the bandits have something to do with the Meath family?" What do you thinks lies? The knights of the Meath family have been guarding the streets for the last 2 weeks. Then a third man says, "I'll kick their asses if they try to come here again. You know, when I met them a few days ago, I glared at them without getting scared. One of them had an awful-looking scar on his jaw, but I still acted bravely, started to beg after I stabbed him." Isu listens and realizes this man is talking about someone he had met before. In the next scene we see Heian coming to Isu and shouting, "Bread! Where is my bread?" Isu replies, "Today I will harvest potatoes." Heian says, "Bread first." Then a small fight starts between the two. One says she wants bread, the other says he wants potatoes. Then Isu says, "I will show you how to do this. So watch carefully and learn." Isu begins to explain to Heian how to get the potatoes out from under the dust. He says, "Dig the dirt under these roots as carefully as possible. Then some big round roots will show up, like this." Heian says, "It's ugly." Isu says, "Doesn't this look like you?" Then he adds, "Have you ever seen a mirror in your life? You said you were 23 years old, right? Now I understand why you couldn't get married until now. Today, I'm going to cook with this one." Heian asks, "Not bread?" Isu says, "If you don't want it, don't eat this." Heian says, "Let's see what you've got first." Then Isu washes the potatoes thoroughly and refreshes them. Heian asks, "So what are you going to make using these things?" Isu replies, "Potato pancake. It's a simple food you can cook with just potatoes and oil." Heian says, "It doesn't sound tasty." Isu says, "Just help me, I'll make you some bread later." Then Heian says, "Give me the knife." Isu gets scared and says, "Have you ever even used this before?" Then he says, "Just grind the potatoes that I give you using this." Heian says, "Okay, sure, I can do something as simple as this." Then we see that she starts grinding the potatoes very fast. Isu is afraid and says, "Hey, let me do it." Then we watch as they grind the potatoes. Isu says, "I didn't expect that you couldn't even peel a potato properly." Hyen says, "It took a long time even for you." Isu says, "Didn't know that you had no idea how to grind potatoes." Hyen says, "Shut up." Then Isu says, "Now we will place this ground potato on the sieve. Throw away the water floating above and mix the residue of potato starch with the grated potato. Then spread a layer of oil on the frying pan and fry it." Hyen says, "That's delicious to you." Isu says, "If you want to add texture to this food, you just need to use some potato slices in it. You can also put in some veggies if you want. It all depends on your personal taste. Now it's done. Go ahead and try this." Hien starts looking at her food carefully. Iju says, "Eat it before it gets cold." Hyen says, "Don't rush me." Iwaju watches her. It seems she liked the food very much. While eating, Hyen says, "These edge parts are especially tasty." Isu thinks she knows how to enjoy this even though she doesn't know how to enjoy expensive ribs. Then he says to Hyen, "Next time I'll make you some potato bread with the potatoes you harvest." Hyen says, "I like the pound cake more." Isu says, "But you seem like you're really enjoying that potato pancake right now." We see that Rose has come to Maggie's house after a long time. Maggie says, "You're here." Rose says, "Yes, by the way, you've been doing fine, haven't you? This time I'll be staying here for about 3 days. Cook me lots of delicious food, okay?" Then Isu comes in and tells Rose, "Miss, can I have some of your time?" Rose gets shocked. In the next scene, Rose says, "So what is this all about?" Isu replies, "I have a favor to ask of you." Rose says, "A favor?" Isu says, "There is something I heard from the villagers in Luchun." Rose asks, "Then?" Isu says, "First I would like to tell you that I am not suspecting the Miao family, so don't be offended by me. I also know that your family has assigned the guards too." Rose asks, "What is it that you want to say?" Isu says, "Someone has already started spreading fake rumors about the Miao family, so before the rumor spreads further, a scar on the chin. Could you check if someone has a knife scar on the chin in your land?" Hien says, "Are you saying that you think the culprit is in our land? Let's say it's him. What are we going to do when we find him?" Isu says, "I already have a plan for that." Rose says, "If you are planning to harm the reputation of a noble, try to think again, if this goes wrong as punishment." In the next scene we see Rose eating something and saying, "No punishment for that. The food has been cooked by Isu." Rose says, "What is this? It's so soft. Did you make a taste like this with butter? If you knew how to do this since long ago, why didn't you make me one before?" Izu says, "I'm glad you like it. So about my favor." Rose says, "Don't worry, all you want is a letter when I find him, right?" Isu says, "Yes, then I will go there." Rose says, "Okay, I can do that, it's nothing hard. Anyway, how did you make this?" Izu says, "Do you remember the potato you brought me first? I washed it clean and then sliced it." Rose says, "Seriously, these country people are so easy to fool." Isu says, "What?" Rose says, "Why are you revealing the information that only you know to others? You should sell that information in exchange for money. Why do you think craft masters earn more than farmers? It's because they have a special trick only they know. They only teach those tricks to their children. When they get wealthy, they'll buy the certificate of nobility and become nobles." Izu says, "Then I guess I can't tell you the recipe." Rose says, "Then instead of that, along with Miss Gay." Isu says, "Okay, enjoy your meal." After a few days we see Rose, who has come to someone's house. Rose says, "Guard, step aside." The guard says, "I was told not to let anyone in." Rose says, "Is that so?" Then someone from inside says, "I heard that someone was spouting. Let's see who that is." Rose says, "It's us who hired the bandits to attack the Luchun village. What kind of child dares to use their long tongue in that way?" Someone from inside tells Rose to come in. One man says, "Hello, Miss Jane Rose. Have you been well?" Rose tells the person, "Lift your face." That person does not give any answer. Rose, while pulling his hair, says, Didn't you hear me? Lift your head up before I smash it. The person sitting in front tells the man to lift his face. We see that it is the same man we encountered once before. The man in front is Rose's father. Rose says, "Father," she continues, "there is something I would like to tell you, just the two of us." Rose tells everything to her father. Then she asks, "What are you going to do now?" Her father says, "That man who just confessed is the territory manager of our family. I knew that the other nobles were planning something, but I didn't expect them to try pulling our honor down by buying our manager." Rose says, "We should tie him upside down and beat him until his insides fall out of his mouth. He still hasn't said anything about the one who paid him to do that, right?" Her father says, "Yes. He claims that everything was planned by himself." Rose says, "Then let's just torture him by drowning him for a week straight." The next day we see Isu going to a place in a beautiful-looking carriage. He reaches the place and we see Rose waiting for him. Isu is quite surprised to see Rose's new getup. He thinks, she is definitely the daughter of a duke. Rose says, "What is with that reaction? Anyway, this isn't right to test a guest who has just arrived like this, but let's take care of that first." Isu says, "Okay." Then Rose asks, "So what is your plan?" Isu says, "This is a treasure of my family. It's made by a wizard with the power of the thunder god and the god of wisdom." Then he shows her something and says, "It's called a lie detector." Rose says, "You don't have to explain it with such minute details. So it's an artifact, right?" Isu says, yes, it's an artifact." Then Rose says, "So this distinguishes lies from the truth." Isu says, "You are right." Rose thinks, who the hell is he really? He's got an artifact as an heirloom, and there's also a wizard in his continent. Artifacts aren't things ordinary civilians can even see. Then she replies, "Okay, let's use this right away." Isu asks, "Don't you want to check what would happen if someone lies?" Rose gets a little scared and says, "Why? Will it kill me?" Isu says, No. Then we see that both of them try to get the truth out of the man's mouth with the help of the machine. Isu says, "From now on, if you tell the truth, God will be on your side, but if you lie, he will punish you by tearing your blood vessels apart." The man says, "Why should I believe that?" Isu says, "I will prove it in a simple way. Just say no to all my questions." Then Siu asks him the first question. "Miss JJ likes Aunt Humphrey's food, right?" Because of this question, everyone starts looking at Rose. The man says, "No." Then the machine detects the lie and gives an electric shock to the man. Yes says, "See, now we are done with the practice." Then Asu says with a horror-struck face, "If you lie once again, your family, children and even grandchildren will be punished for your sin. You will be punished by God who will tear your limbs apart." The man gets scared and says, "Please leave my family out of this. I just did what I was told to do." Isu becomes happy. Rose's father says to Isu, "I will continue from here. You can wait outside. Please take your artifact with you." Then we see Isu and Rose coming out of the room. Rose says, "That was quick." Isu says, "What should we do now?" Rose says, "There was something I prepared for you." Isu asks, "What?" Rose says, "I'm sure you'll like it a lot." We see a basket of cakes being brought to Isu as thanks. Isu gets shocked. Rose says, "Looks tasty, right? Try this. It's a flour dessert and is very popular among nobles and royals." Isu thinks this will be a very tasty dessert. But after eating it, he smells a lot of perfume, which he doesn't like very much. Rose says, "What do you think?" Isu says, "No comment." Then Rose says, "Try the others too." He says, "Okay," and thinks, "I hope that one tastes better." Rose says, "You can try each one of them." Then he eats another one and thinks, "I don't understand these tastes. It tastes like cosmetics, so terrible." After the lie-detecting incident, Isu has earned the trust of the media family. Now we see him relaxing after the incident. Rose and Isu are seen having a fun banter. After a while she asks, "By the way," Isu replies, "Yes." Rose continues, "Can I borrow this?" Isu is confused and asks, "What are you going to use it for, if I may ask?" Rose, with determination says, "I was thinking of disciplining some of the guards." Isu gets scared for the guards and denies her request. Later in the evening, Isu arrives before Count Medea and properly introduces himself. Rose asks her father, "How did it go? Is the Fia family really related to all of this?" Count Medea replies, "Yes. The royal family has decided to impose separate punishments. The man they instigated will be sentenced to prison for life." We see Count Medea being grateful to Isu, as he was the most helpful. The next morning, Isu wakes up from a comfortable sleep, then walks toward the window to watch the bustling town. As he feels the chilly air, he quickly shuts the window. In the meantime, his butler arrives and brings him morning tea, snacks, and a bathrobe for him to cover himself. To Isu, it felt weird that he was relaxing in this new world, but he made up his mind, "This world is my new home." When he heard a voice calling for him, stating that the meal was prepared and Isu was called to have a meal with Count Medea. At the dining table, we see Rose all excited as she watches Io wearing formal noble clothes, commenting, "You look as shiny as a new gold coin in that outfit." Isu feels embarrassed since he's not used to noble clothing but decides to have the meal with the Medea family. Rose is interrupted by her personal maid for her informal way of speaking. Feeling lectured, she orders the maid to bring the food. The dishes looked delicious. There were fruits, chicken, and fish. Yet when Ayachu tried the fish, it was bland and only tasted of salt and pepper. Rose, bold as ever, noticed Ayachu's reaction and spoke up. "Now you know why I keep going back to Mrs. Humphrey." Not wanting to make the Medea family feel bad, Izo compliments the food. Then he is served mutton ribs, which he finds good and not gamey. Rose's mother, feeling worried for her child, speaks up. "Goodness dear, aren't you a little picky about your food?" Rose answers in frustration, "You won't say that once you've tried Mrs. Humphrey's food, mother." Her mother says, "That's why I'm telling you to invite her over." After the meal, Rose and Isu go out to explore the town. While they are leaving, Count Medea and his personal butler have a deep conversation about Isu's rewards. But Lord Medea had something else in mind for Isu. He proposes, "Money isn't enough to express gratitude for what he has done for us." The butler is shocked and realizes that Lord Medea is thinking of writing a recommendation letter for Isu to become a noble. The butler explains that through the Count's recommendation, Isu can buy noble privileges without any restriction, but he also mentions that the Count rarely writes recommendations. After the discussion about recommendations, Count Medea and his butler have a fun conversation about Isu, common people, and hiring a butler. A few days later, we see a posh carriage with metal wheels and 2 horses pulling it. A familiar man sits inside. It's Isu. He now has the recommendation letter and 5,000 gold coins for buying the noble privilege. He thinks the money is too much for him, so he plans to save some in the bank. Soon they reach Rodan. Examining the weak fencing, he starts formulating ideas for a new fence around the village. On a beautiful morning, we see Isu and Hans working hard on the walls of Hans's house, since winter is coming. Hans, a bit curious, asks, "How do people in your hometown prepare for winter?" Isu is a bit confused as to how he should explain the idea of central heating, but tries. "We have something called undul," he says, which is an underfloor heating system. Basically, we lay stones on the floor and light a fire underneath, which warms the air and heats the stones. Hans is shocked and terrified. In a scared tone, he says, "So you grill people alive?" Isu had a rough idea how Hans would react, so he doesn't press the topic any further, but he begins planning how to build an ondol system himself. When he becomes a lord, he realizes he will have to build a designated room for it. Later, he comes up with another idea and asks Hans for help. Hans shows up to Isu's living quarters in the village with pork feet. Isu thanks him and asks him to place them on the table. We see Humphrey a bit excited and shouting to announce that Isu will be in charge of today's dinner. She later asks, "Everyone raise your hands if you're going to eat here. The rest who have family waiting back home can leave." Isu is shocked by the number of people wanting to try his cooking. He politely asks them, "It's going to take a while, why don't you all wait outside until it's ready?" As the last person steps out, the air around Isu changes. He brings out his secret weapon from another world, spices and condiments. He starts by cooking the pig's feet with water, beer and bay leaves, allowing it to boil. After the first boil, he removes the water and adds fresh water to boil the legs again, removing the gamey smell. Isu takes them in a bowl and adds soy sauce and herb tonic tea for marination, also adding salt and sugar for seasoning. After hours of hard labor and cooking, the dish is finally done. He announces, "Dinner is served, everyone." The people are shocked to see Isu's cooking. Some are even salivating to taste it. They are further amazed by the flavor of the pig's feet, having never tried anything like it before. Some start pestering Isu to share his recipe. Hans, mesmerized by the food, asks him, "Isu, the chewy skin is awesome. How did you make the sauce?" Isu, knowing he can't reveal his secret origins, says it's a family secret sauce that has been passed down for generations, so I can't tell you, sorry. Hans is a bit disappointed but understands. Later, Isu wants to enjoy the meal and finds an empty spot near a man. He asks for permission to sit next to him. The man agrees and says, "Sure, I'm Joker." Isu finds the man interesting, as he's a new face, and wants to know more about him. "I haven't seen you before. Are you a merchant? How did you come all the way here?" "Here in such cold weather," the man replied with an excited and playful laugh. "Yes, I run a fish shop. Fish sells well in weather like this." Isu replied thoughtfully, "I guess it's because the costs for preservation magic are lower in this cold weather." The man was impressed by Isu's answer and responded, "That's right, preservation magic is pretty expensive. Besides, climbing Mount Knots in this freezing weather is like wanting to get closer to the Lord, so this is a great opportunity to make a lot of money by selling fresh fish." The man, speaking in a tired tone, took a bite of Isu's cooking. He was instantly delighted, and a new source of energy seemed to awaken in him as he screamed in joy and kept showering Isu with compliments for the wonderful treat. Isu was a bit taken aback by the man's tenacity and riskier way of earning money, so he asked the man for his business card for future needs. A few days later, the terrifying and harsh cold hit the village. Isu, who didn't have any proper heating system, was shown sitting near the fireplace to warm himself. He saw this as a personal trial and believed it wouldn't last long. While he was deep in thought, he was interrupted by villagers screaming, "There's a fire!" Rushing out of his cottage, he saw the rising flames. He stood there devastated and confused as to why there was a fire. Soon Hans woke him up from his trance, asking him to help bring water to stop the fire from spreading. The village was in terror. Everyone ran, bringing water to fight the flames. A lady cried out, "Oh no, my house! Please save my house!" Just as the panic was rising, Heian entered the scene. With her water magic, she began chanting, "Meljum Kuto Noan Aru Dian," asking the water spirits for help. She summoned a large amount of water to save the village from burning down. The villagers were shocked to witness magic in action. Seeing a royal descendant of elves arriving to help them and their town was something they had never expected. As Heian cast her spell and formed a huge water ball that burst into rain, the fire was finally stopped from spreading further. With the fire calmed, the villagers stood in awe. Whispers filled the air. "Wasn't that magic just now? What is a mage doing in our village?" Though feeling weak from using her mana, Heian stood her ground. An old man spoke up in a soft voice and bowed down in gratitude. Seeing him, the rest of the villagers followed and expressed their heartfelt thanks. Isu was proud of her and tried calling her, but she ignored him and walked back to her living quarters. The villagers began discussing plans to renovate the burned houses, and some even came up with good ideas. Still, Isu remained worried about Heian. The next morning, Isu rushed to Heian's quarters and knocked gently on her door. "Hey Heian, it's me," he said, holding a brown bag. She slowly opened the door, looking gloomy and tired from using her mana the day before. Seeing him, she asked in a frustrated voice, "What do you want?" Isu tried to convince her to talk, but she shut the door on his face and snapped, "You're wasting my precious time." Knowing she was in a bad mood, Isu tried a different approach. "Guess what the bread mage brought you," he teased. Feeling both hungry and curious, Heian slowly opened the door again and spoke in a disgusted yet warm tone. "You're becoming more and more cunning by the day." Isu laughed softly and replied, And you still wear your heart on your sleeve. As his laughter faded, he noticed the bags under her eyes and became concerned. He gently asked, "What happened?" She replied nonchalantly, "Magical powers don't pop out of nowhere, you know." Isu realized how much mana she had used and sincerely thanked her for saving the village. Feeling embarrassed by his gratitude, she spoke in a pouty and half-angry tone. "I didn't do it for the village, I did it to protect the bread mage." Isu, knowing she was moody, didn't press further. Instead, he asked in a serious tone, "By the way, are you okay with the villagers knowing your identity?" She understood her secret was out, and that it might lead to people disturbing her. Still, in a foul mood, she replied irritably, "That's none of your business, I'll take care of it. I need to rest, so hand over what you have and beat it." Izu, understanding her exhaustion, did as she asked. As he handed over the bag, he explained, "Those are called egg cookies." Just as he was about to say more, she shut the door firmly, leaving him standing there alone. He thought to himself, she really needs to work on her temper. As he walked away, he shrugged and mused, "Well, I'm sure they have egg cookies here as well, so I can skip the explanation." Meanwhile, Hyen watched him leave. Her eyes followed his figure for a little while before turning her attention to the egg cookies. She was quite mesmerized by their appearance and muttered, "Cookies baked with eggs, but they don't smell like the ones I know." She picked one up. It looked extremely delicious and crispy. The moment she took a bite, it melted on her tongue. Only one sentence escaped her lips: "They're delicious." Later we see the villagers gather around the riverside for a festival, but Isu is confused as to why everyone is gathered there until he meets Hans, who has shown up at the riverside all excited and dressed in new clothing. Still confused by the occasion, Isu asks Hans about it. That's when Hans hands him a pot. Confused, Isu asks, "A pot?" Hans replies, "Yes, we put a stone in the pot every year, which signifies our age. Make sure you find a pretty stone by the riverside." Though still puzzled, Isu accepts the gift from Hans and complies with the ritual. But curiosity lingers, and he asks Hans, "By the way, is this some kind of special day? This place is packed." Knowing Asu is not from the village and is an outsider, Hans replies, "Oh, you probably don't know. Asu, today is the village festival called Kwaz Saluna. That's when we place the stones in the pot." Isu finally understands the significance of the festival and enjoys it with the villagers. As the moon begins to rise, the village chief stands on a platform waiting to speak. The crowd goes quiet as he begins, "Please watch over our Radran throughout the coming year as well." As the speech continues, fireworks go off in the distance, and people can be seen laughing and enjoying themselves. Hans and Isu talk about how long the ritual goes on. As people gather, Isu has a small conversation with the chief and asks for permission to continue staying in the village. The chief nods in approval. Later, the chief calls everyone to form a line. The villagers get excited, knowing it's time for the Kwaz Salona ritual. The chief marks everyone's forehead with a red powder mixed with water. As the chief slowly marks each person, Isu grows nervous. This is his first Kwaz Saluna, and he awaits his turn. After he is marked, Hans tells him, "Next we put the stone in our pots and make a wish." Isu nods and does as Hans says. He closes his eyes and wishes, "I wish for this year to be happier than the last one. Mom, Dad, I'm doing good, and I really miss you both." After Kwaz Salona days pass, we see Asu preparing to leave the village. He makes sure to pack all the essential things: food, water, a first aid kit, and most importantly, the money gifted by Count Medich. Later he meets up with Rose and they have a conversation about how Isu can buy noble privilege. Rose also mentions that he can buy the status in Pusing. Rose explains, "Pusing is a port city run by us, the Medich family. We initially used the manga port, but the family that controlled it started imposing heavy taxes, so we had to find a new port." Isho understands their situation and Rose continues, "Every port has a royal administration that issues rank certificates. Since you have my father's recommendation letter, you can easily buy one in Pusing." Ishu feels the generosity gifted to him by Count Medich and feels deeply indebted to the Medich family for this amazing opportunity. But then Rose states, before that you need to overcome one more hurdle. Isu falls into deep thought, realizing that he has to pay a hefty price for noble privilege. He wonders if he's being pulled into some kind of scam but shakes off the doubt, choosing to trust Count Medich. He feels he's rushing to buy noble status and keeps thinking of other ways to use his 8,000 gold, like buying a great house back in his original world. But he dismisses the idea, saying to himself, the reason I decided to buy the status first is because I want to find my purpose in life here. Since I've come all the way to another world, why not make good use of my time and at least become a feudal lord? He had made up his mind. Later we see Isu and Hyen having a delightful chat. While eating, Hyen speaks with a stuffed mouth. I want to go to Pusine too. Isu smiles at her clumsiness and says, swallow your food before speaking. She nods, finishes the bread Isu brought, and starts coughing while hitting her chest to swallow, looking very childish and cute. After swallowing the food, she says with a proud and loud voice, take me with you to Pusing. I'll be your guard. Isu is a bit shocked and laughs softly, saying, I doubt someone so feeble can protect me. Hyen pouts at him. He feels a little bad but enjoys seeing her pout. That's when Hyen decides to show off her skills. She collects water using magic and brings it close to Isu's weak points. The icicles she forms are so sharp that they could seriously harm him. Scared for his life, Iso shouts, hey, what's the big idea? Get this away from me. It's clear Isu is genuinely terrified, but Hyen smirks and says, I haven't used this magic in a while, so I might struggle to control my power. Inju, furious and worried, replies, another reason not to take you. You're staying here. But Hyen doesn't agree. She refuses Isu's rejection. It seems she has another motive. That's when she says, it's Martha. I want to pay you back for what you've done for her. If you decide to accept my offer, I plan to use my power solely for you for a year. Isu is a bit taken aback. Taken aback by her sentiments, Isu was about to speak when Hyen interrupted. Besides, I also need to continue having the bread mage's bread. She seemed a bit irritated that today's offering wasn't bread, though she remained moody. She admitted, it wasn't bread this time, but it was still delicious. Isu was confused by her irritation, as he was sure she'd like the dessert. It was made with the cheese he and Humphrey had prepared together. Hyen explained, I also liked the crunchy biscuit at the base. The savoriness goes well with the saltiness of the cheese. While she complimented him, she still added, but bread is better. Isu smiled at her and asked, by the way, what will you do if I decline? She replied with a nonchalant and irritated look, I'll take you for the worst dimwit ever and flee this village. Isu sighed and thought that taking Hyen along would be better than going alone. Everything was set, money was prepared, and he'd be working with a mage who controlled water. Still, he felt that 1 year was too short, so he asked her, hey, but does it have to be a year? Hyen was surprised by Isu's cleverness and replied in a mocking tone, I guess you're smarter than I thought. She then explained that she had royal duties too and couldn't follow him around forever. Isu understood and thought to himself, today is just the first day. That's when Hyen dropped her demand. Instead, provide me a loaf of tasty bread every single week. Isu was confused, thinking, she clearly said she wanted to show gratitude, so why is she talking about conditions? He began calculating the gains and losses from her demand, and it clearly ended up with him at a loss. But then he smiled wickedly and decided he'd make sure to use Hyen and her powers to cover his losses. That was the terrifying logic of the human mind. Hyen noticed Isu staring at her and asked, why are you staring at me with your yucky eyes? He responded with a polite and innocent tone, excuse me, what are you talking about? This showed just how clever and mysterious Isu could be. The next morning, they left for Posing. We see expensive carriages and lots of materials prepared for camping. A kid popped up and said, Isu, thanks for the ride. An expensive carriage sure feels nice. Isu smiled and welcomed him. The kid and Isu chatted about how he got the carriage, and Isu explained that Rose had gifted it to him. That's when the kid whispered into Isu's ear, anyway, when did you and Hyen become, a thing? Yasu was confused and immediately rejected the idea. Kairiden, overhearing it, laughed loudly and appreciated the joke. Yasu was a bit hurt, and said she wasn't his type. It was obvious Heian wasn't interested in him romantically, except for his bread. We then get a glimpse into Heian's past life. She explained that she is the only known descendant of half-elves, as the pure elves have long gone extinct. Those were difficult times, but they managed to survive. Heian believed that hiding her appearance would prevent misunderstandings. Still, after going out, she realized the outside world could feel refreshing. The fresh air on her skin made her feel alive, yet she also carried deep sadness related to her family and couldn't afford to goof around like Isu. Curious about Asu, she asked, "Yasu, you said you're a voyager, right?" Isu nodded. Understanding his answer, she asked further, "That means you're not going to stay in Furun. Where are you planning to go next?" Isu replied, "I'm not sure yet, but for now, I'm going to become a feudal lord." She was a bit suspicious and commented, "I've never seen a feudal lord wander around without guards." Isu smiled and said, "That's because I'm not a feudal lord yet." Still unsure about his true identity, she asked, "Are you some aristocrat who came to the real world for experience?" Isu politely declined and assured her he was really a commoner. She wasn't sure he understood how difficult becoming a feudal lord was and said, "Do you think it's easy to become a feudal lord?" Isu replied playfully, "Careful, you're talking to a future baron here." They had a deeper conversation about titles like baron and count. She explained how 9 out of 10 barons get stripped of their titles for being unable to pay taxes. But Iyasu remained calm and said, "No worries, I'm going to get filthy rich anyway." Intrigued, she asked, "That's interesting, and how do you plan to do that?" He smirked and reminded her, "I'm the bread mage. I can always open a bakery shop in a large city." She was on board with his plan and agreed it was a fantastic idea. As they traveled, it started to get dark. They set up camp near a safe spot and rested. At dawn, everyone began gathering their belongings and cleaning up, preparing to continue their journey. Isu was looking for Heian when she suddenly appeared from the forest. Isu was happy to see her and went to speak, but Heian ignored him. He didn't feel bad. He was used to her cold demeanor. Still curious about what she was doing in the forest so early, he tried to peek. That's when he discovered a group of wild dogs had been killed. As they continued traveling in the carriage, Isu turned and asked, "The one who killed those wild dogs, right?" Isu asked. She replied nonchalantly, "Why do you ask?" Isu was proud of her for stepping up to protect them from the wild dogs and felt happy that she was doing something good. As they traveled further, they came to a halt, confused. And Shu asked, "Why did you suddenly stop?" The boy replied that they had to pay a toll. That's when Shu had an idea. He picked up his recommendation letter from Count Matti, which allowed him to save money. The boy and Isu shared some light banter about the recommendation letter. The boy was shocked, as Count Matti rarely gave out recommendations. When Iosu reached the registration office, he submitted the letter and 5,000 gold coins to buy his title. The clerk, pleased with the recommendation, asked, "So your name is Isu, may I have your surname?" Iosu was momentarily dazed. He didn't have a surname, which was fairly common. The clerk suggested he pick one from the book. Risu rampaged through the pages, not finding anything suitable, until he came across a beautiful name, Bloom. He picked it as his surname. After his selection, the clerk asked him to sign the papers and then announced, "Sir Ius Bloom," granting him the title of Baron. After the signature, Isu asked the clerk if he could leave. The clerk then explained, "From here on, to earn the title of Count, you must undergo training at a Count's estate for 3 years and pay an annual tax of at least 1,000 gold each year until you have satisfied the 50,000 gold requirement." Isu had almost forgotten about these conditions. He spoke up, "I'm thinking of getting my training from the Medi family. Do I have any other options?" The clerk offered him a shortcut. He could pay 10,000 gold coins for a completion certificate. Isu felt a bit uneasy and asked if he could have some time to think about it. The clerk agreed. As he stepped out, Heian approached him with a disgusted look on her face, saying, "Did you seriously buy that certificate?" Isu replied, "Careful. From now on, address me as Baron Bloom." This irritated Hyen, and she cracked a joke about making him kneel in front of the Grand Mage, which terrified Isu, but it turned out to be a joke. Later she said she was hungry, and the two of them visited a fancy restaurant and ordered food. When the food arrived, Hyen looked at it with suspicion. Isu, a bit skeptical of her not liking seafood, still tried to feed her the shrimp by placing it on her plate. As she tasted the shrimp, she felt the waves and saltiness of the ocean. It mesmerized her with delight. Isu felt proud and happy that she enjoyed it. However, she felt something was missing and ordered the server to bring lemon water, as it goes well with seafood. Her tone was a bit rude. Seeing this, Isu felt bad for the server and said gently to Hyen, "Be a little more polite." Hyen was irritated and replied in an annoyed tone, "This is how I talk. I can't help it." Isu responded after thinking deliberately, "But that's not how you talk when you ask for bread." Hyen answered, "That's because I'm getting free, delicious bread, better than what I can find at an upscale bakery. Obviously I'll be kind." Isu silently agreed with her in the back of his mind. She then explained, "Lobster isn't cheap, and not bringing lemon water shows unprofessionalism." Isu developed newfound respect for her after hearing her explanation. She was right. Hyen then ordered Isu to peel shrimps for her. He complied without any resistance, which made her smile a little. The next morning, both Isu and Hyen were wandering around the city when Hyen said, "This place reeks of fish. It's stinging my nose." Isu, a bit worried, replied, "That's the smell of the ocean. Hang in there. Have you ever seen an ocean before?" Realizing it was her first time seeing the ocean, he smiled. Despite being grumpy, she was actually excited. After walking some distance, they arrived at the port. The beautiful scenery left Hyen lost in awe. The fresh waves, the cold sea air, and the bustling town, it was all a new experience for her. The first words that came out of her mouth after seeing the breathtaking scene were, "Ah, it's so big." Meanwhile, Isu found a perfectly flat stone and called out, "Hyen, wanna see something cool?" Confused by what he meant, she stayed silent. Isu grinned, stretched his body, pulled his arm back, and threw the stone from the side. It skipped across the ocean water 7 times. Hyen, still silent, was curious to try. She picked up a stone and threw it, but it sank immediately. Isu said politely, "That's not how you throw it." Unbeknownst to him, Hyen used magic to make the stone skip more than 7 times. Isu protested, "That's cheating." Hyen smirked and replied nonchalantly, "Too bad you're not a mage." This irritated Isu, and he wanted revenge. That's when Hyen called out, "Let's go, Baron Bloom." Isu felt a shock run down his spine as he was not used to being called Baron. Isu said, "Don't call me that in public. I need some time to get used to it." Hyen agreed, and they both walked around the city for a while before stumbling across the architecture guild which Isu had been searching for. He entered the guild and was greeted by a middle-aged man in his 40s, who asked, "What help can I provide?" Isu spoke his mind. "I would like to build an underground store." The clerk understood his request and asked him to be seated while he formulated the plans. After some time, the clerk asked, "What size do you have in mind?" Isu replied right away, "It'll be a shared storage space for the entire village." Understanding Isu's needs, the clerk nodded and started designing the structure. Meanwhile, Isu explained, "It's a village called Rerun, with 70 residents. It's about 3 days' distance from here if you take the East Provincial Road." After listening, the clerk summarized, "Considering travel expenses, materials, and labor, it will cost a total of 52 gold. Isu thought to himself, building a log cabin costs 20 gold, so building an underground storage facility for 52 gold is pretty reasonable. Then a doubt crept into his mind. He asked the clerk, "How much would it cost to build a feudal lord's estate?" The clerk replied, "That really depends." Isu then said thoughtfully, "Let's say, as big as the Meta family's castle, for example." After considering the query and the size of the Medi family's castle, the clerk replied, "If we're only talking about the inner castle, it would cost around 50,000 gold at today's prices." Isu was in complete shock. That amount was overwhelming, about 5 billion won in his world, a long way off for him. The clerk then spoke with pride. Our great-great-grandfather built the Medi family's castle, so I believe it's fair to say I've inherited the know-how. Hearing his proud words, Aishu asked for his business card. In return, the clerk asked for Aishu's name. Isu replied with pride, "It's Isu Bloom, Baron Bloom." Hearing his name and title, the clerk became nervous and loudly asked for forgiveness. He promised to personally go and build the storage facility in Isu's village. Isu felt a bit strange being called Lord by someone older than him, but shook off the thought. He then requested the clerk to meet him at the shop by dusk, which the clerk accepted with a nervous nod. This demeanor made Isu feel a bit weird, almost like he was the boss. This kind of authority wasn't something he was used to back in Korea, and it made him uncomfortable. As he walked out of the guild, he thought to himself, I hope this is enough of a farewell gift. While walking, he stumbled upon a cute dog that caught his attention. As he paused, Hyen, waiting for him, said irritably, "Stop getting sidetracked and let's head home already." Isu asked her to wait for a while, but Hyen, clearly irritated, told him to hurry. He thought she was being a bit stingy, but ignored it. Instead, he focused on enjoying the dogs. He asked the man nearby, "Which breed are they?" The man replied proudly, "They're border collies. They're trained as sheepdogs and specialize in herding." This made Iyasu want to adopt them and gift them to Rodin to help the villagers with their farms. As Aishu admired the dogs, the man explained, "When herding sheep, you send them signals by blowing a grass blade or using a whistle." Izu was really impressed and asked curiously, "How many would I need to herd a flock of 50 sheep?" The man examined the question and confidently replied, "One should be more than enough." Isu then asked, "How much do I need to pay?" The man replied, 3 gold, sir." Isu excitedly said, "In that case, I'll take them in pairs." He paid the man on the spot, thrilled. He thought about the villagers and how helpful the dogs would be, but if they didn't need them, he would raise the dogs himself. He adored them too much. Then a realization struck him hard. Hyen hates animals. What he had just done was a big mistake. He glanced at Hyen's face, and it was clear she disliked animals. He wondered what kind of trauma or experience she had gone through. As time passed and a new day arrived, the clerk from the Architecture Guild waited for Isu on time. The dogs were energetic and excited to see Isu, licking all over his face, which disgusted Hyen. She sarcastically gave the dogs an affectionate nickname with an irritated tone, saying, "You call them babies? Since when were you a dog?" She was irritated because the dogs got the best seats, which made her feel even more annoyed with Isu. After settling the dogs in the carriage, Isu called for the clerk and politely said, "By the way, I have a request." The man smiled and asked, "What would that be, sir?" Isu replied, "The villagers don't know I've become a baron yet, so I would like you to address me as Isu for today." The clerk agreed with a smile and took his leave. After conversing with the clerk, Isu returned to the carriage and started riding with Hyen. Curious about her thoughts, he asked, "So how did you like Pizing City?" Hyen was irritated and replied to him in a loud, annoyed voice, "Why did you even bother becoming a noble instead of just traveling?" Isu understood that she was a bit shy and responded in a light-hearted tone, "Sounds like you had fun." Later he smiled softly at her and said, "Let's travel together here and there for the next year." Hyen had an understanding look on her face and spoke in a gentle voice, "You said you're going to get trained at the Medi household, correct?" Isu agreed, and Hyen continued, "When are you planning to leave?" Isu replied, "About a week from now. Why do you ask?" After hearing his answer, Hyen spoke again, "Because I need to get prepared before we leave." Iyasu was a bit taken aback by her response, and asked with a curious tone, "Are you sure? You might draw people's attention." Hyen replied confidently, "I have a plan. All you need to do is follow my lead." As the days passed, Yi and Hyen reached Rira. The villagers were excited to see them back. A few of them started announcing his return, which made everyone happy. One of the villagers, shocked by the gifts Eoja brought, exclaimed in surprise, "Goodness, look at all this. He brought us expensive seafood, is planning to build us underground storage, and even brought us these sheepdogs." The dogs were especially fond of the village chief and began licking and showing affection to him. The chief, speaking in a delighted tone, said, "This is your home from now on." As he enjoyed watching the dogs and the chief play together, he was interrupted by a crying Hans. "Are you really leaving?" Hans asked. Isu replied warmly, "Yeah, I'm thinking of exploring other places." Hans responded, still softly crying but not showing much sadness. "I see, so it was true, that makes me a bit sad." Isu was a little shocked that Hans didn't seem very sad about his departure, which made him feel slightly down, but he kept a smile on his face to hide it. After living in Rodan for a few more days, the time for Iosu's departure arrived. He began packing his essentials, his toothbrush, soap and towel for the journey. While packing, he thought to himself, "I need to complete an 800-hour training course to be officially titled a baron." He kept thinking and planning, if I were to take 8 hours of lessons per day, it's a waste to open a new portal if I'm only gone for 3 to 4 months. So let's leave it here. As he packed, his mind wandered to Hyen because he was worried about her. He remembered his talk with Martha, where she explained that Hyen refused to go to the city due to fear of her identity being exposed. He kept wondering whether he should take her or not. Meanwhile, Hyen was alone at Martha's grave, mourning. She spoke quietly, "Martha, I feel uneasy thinking about leaving you here and going away. You were a great mother and a good friend." We see a glimpse of Hyen's past, where she's bratty and screaming. "Are you saying she wasn't my mother? Then where is my real mother? Get rid of that woman and bring me my real mother." In her memories, we see Martha sweet and kind. Even after being harshly told to leave, she returned to Hyen with a bright smile, though Hyen was still angry and screamed at her. When she saw Martha smiling and bringing her something, she calmed down and began to trust her again. In another memory, Martha was wrongly accused of stealing. She cried out in front of the Duke, "I really didn't steal that necklace. I'm innocent, madam." The Duke, furious and believing the accusation, shouted, "You aren't even showing a hint of remorse. Have you no shame?" As she was being scolded, Hyen jumped in and defended her, shouting Martha would never do such a thing. "It's that witch, she set her up." Martha was surprised and deeply touched by Hyen standing up for her, but the Duke didn't trust his own daughter's words. He ordered the guards to lock Hyen in her room and have Martha executed. Worried for Martha, Hyen took her hand and fled the castle to the village. Remembering those moments, Hyen added softly, "Thank you, Martha, and I love you." She felt regret, especially when she remembered that Martha had once wanted to eat grilled mackerel with Iosu's special sauce. She regretted not asking Iosu to cook it for her again. Speaking to Martha's grave, she said, "A while ago he peeled some shrimp for me, and it was hard to hold back tears. It reminded me of you." She smiled faintly. "I had my doubts about him at first, but maybe he's not that bad of a guy like you said. Actually, he's more like interesting, I should say. That's why I decided to go with him." Just as she stood to leave, Isu came running toward her, calling her name. Before leaving Martha's grave, she spoke one last time. "Want to see if he really becomes a duke." With that, she left, hoping Martha's soul was in heaven, watching over her. Meanwhile, Isu was finishing his packing. He grinned and smiled to himself while holding a golden packet. Looking at it closely, it was ramen, a dish from his homeworld. Isu thought he had done a good job preparing for the trip. Before departing from the village, he cried tears of joy while nuzzling his cheek against the ramen packet, full of nostalgic happiness.